amazing people than the seniors served by Meals on Wheels. As a volunteer, you deliver a hot, nutritious meal and a friendly hello to someone just like your mother, grandfather, or next door neighbor. These seniors are inspiring people with incredible stories to share, and they love to see you. The smiles you get back are priceless. Delivering with Meals on Wheels is easy, and you don't have to drive like me for it to be quick. You can volunteer your lunch break once a week or just once a month. With 1 in 6 seniors facing hunger and many more living in isolation, your lunch break can make a real difference. So, America, let's do lunch. Volunteer your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
Okay, Simon, what are you wearing right now?
Nothing.
That's right. And what do people normally wear?
Clothes.
Exactly. So now mommy's going to teach you how to dress yourself. Clothes keep us warm, they look good, and if we go out without them, the neighbors will talk. So it's important to know how to get dressed. Here's how it's done. Underwear always comes first, name tag at the back, then pants, then shirt. Get the first button in the right hole or you have to start all over. If you're wearing a tie, it goes over, round, round, through, and pull tight. Tuck your shirt into your pants and zip up your fly. Socks going first, then shoes right on right, left on left. With shoelaces, just take the ends, cross them over, switch the loops. The rabbit goes down the hole, pull tight, and you're left with bunny ears.
I love bunnies.
Good to know. Now remember, spots don't go with stripes, socks don't go with sandals, and if you've tucked in your shirt, wear a belt. Got it? Why are your pants on your head?
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But spending just 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush their teeth is easier and could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain. For fun 2-minute videos to watch while brushing, visit 2min2x.org. That's 2min2x.org. A message from the Partnership for Healthy Mouths, Healthy Lives, and the Ad Council.
So you see, son, good manners are very, very important. Someday, many years from now, when you're a grown-up, you'll be a man. And when you are, you should be a gentleman. Do you want me to go through it one more time?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Exactly. Always say please, thank you, you're welcome, and excuse me. Sit up straight, hold doors open for ladies. If a door's shut, then knock first. Don't burp, don't swear, don't speak with your mouth full, don't reach across people's plates, keep your elbows off the table.
What table?
And don't interrupt. While we're at it, don't stare, don't use foul language, don't call people names, but do remember people's names. Always share your toys, play nice, and cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. On the bus, give up your seat to anyone who has trouble standing bottom line. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated. Got it?
Got it.
And stop picking your nose.
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But spending just 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush their teeth is easier and could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain. For fun 2-minute videos to watch while brushing, visit 2min2x.org. That's 2min2x.org. A message from the Partnership for Healthy Mouths, Healthy Lives, and the Ad Council.
Hey, there he is. How's it going?
I'm having a stroke.
Are you going to shake my hand or what?
I'm having a stroke.
Wow, you're not even moving your arm.
I'm having a stroke.
Are you okay?
I'm having a stroke.
Your face looks weird, too.
I'm having a stroke.
Are you having a seizure or something?
I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear.
I'm having a stroke.
You just need to know the sudden signs. Look for FAST, F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. Or S, speech difficulty. Then T, time. Time to call 911 immediately, because the sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in their recovery. Know the sudden signs. Face, arm, speech, time. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
Or if that resume was from someone who
worked 12-hour shifts at the recycling company with my dad, who's 72. That taught me a work ethic that I carry with me every day.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone.
Growing up where I did, a lot of things could have gotten in the way of my goals, but I learned to push through, and that's what I bring to work every day.
So maybe it's time we look beyond the resume and look to Grads of Life. Discover new ways to develop great talent that are so much more than what's on paper at gradsoflife.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't sat in your lap in months. And even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover guitar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Dear John, I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but you've left me no choice. I'm leaving. Uncontrolled high blood pressure is really serious, and lately you seem to really not care. I've been there for you since day one, and I know you think I'm going to keep ticking. But no, my friend, I can quit whenever I want. Why can't we get back to the good times, when we were more active and ate more healthy foods, and you checked on me every once in a while? Is that too much to ask? I don't want to leave, but unless you stop ignoring me, what else am I supposed to do? Remember, when I quit, you quit. Sincerely, your heart.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you. Doing the minimum to control your high blood pressure isn't doing enough. High blood pressure can lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get your blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late. Find out how at heart.org/blood pressure. Check, change, control. A message from the American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason Derulo. I love that music connects to people all over the country. But unfortunately, so does something else. Childhood hunger. 15 million kids struggle with hunger right here in America. And yet, every year, billions of pounds of surplus food in the U.S. go to waste instead of going to the children in need. Feeding America is working to change this. The Feeding America nationwide network of food banks rescues this surplus of food to help provide meals to families in virtually every community in the United States, including yours. But they just can't do this alone. Join me in the fight against hunger in America. For more information on what you can do to get involved, visit feedingamerica.org. That's feedingamerica.org. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey everyone. Let's all stop what we're doing right now and take a moment. That felt good, huh? Just like that, we had a nice special sort of moment together. Of course, they don't all need to be quiet moments to be special. They could be loud moments, goofy moments, sporty moments, dorky moments. Moments where we talk or walk or just hang out. It doesn't really matter. They all count. Because every time dads like us take a moment like that to spend with our kids, well, it's pretty momentous. Sounds like somebody agrees. So let's take a moment to make a moment. Today, call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't sat in your lap in months. And even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover guitar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
What are you talking about?
No, it's not him. There is only one more. There is only one more. That's it. One more. Get arrest! No!
They saw your team put up zero effort.
Wake up!
Remember in the old days they used to have oxygen for them. Where's the oxygen? Play like absolute just garbage.
This is the Sports Loudmouths.
Yay!
Man, can you keep it down? I'm trying to introduce here. With Errol Marks and Speedy Beatty.
You're not even a has-been. You're a never was. You're a never was.
April 6th, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to a new show of the Sports Loudmouths. I'm your host, Errol Marks. My co-host, Speedy Petey. 631-672-3108 is the number to call. You can go to our website at www.worldwidesportsradio.com. Check out all our shows throughout the week, including our show, The Sports Loudmouths, which airs every Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Speeder, what's up, man?
Happy Passover to everybody celebrating, and also a shout out to my one of my brothers, alum Quinnipiac, in the men's hockey Frozen Four semifinals, taking on Michigan. Sorry, Carl, I cannot root for Michigan tonight. I'm rooting for my brother's alma mater of Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac, a very good hockey team, a hockey team that deserves every bit of the stardom that they've had all season long, and now in the Frozen Four. So it's going to be fun tonight against Michigan, and we'll see gets into the finals, and that's going to be something to be remembered for a very, very long time. But we have a great show lined up for you at 9:30. We'll be talking to BetSperts and 4for4 fantasy football and betting analyst, our friend John Daigle, a.k.a. Mr. Chicago. At 11 o'clock, we'll be talking to the host of Broadway Hats podcast and Rangers and USA hockey writer Kyle Hall. It's going to be fun. Mr. Hall, who has not been on the show and has the opportunity now to talk a little USA hockey. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of good young hockey players going into this year's draft. So very excited to have Kyle on the show. ESPN Packers insider reports that the Packers will not meet the Jets' current demands for Aaron Rodgers. What does this say for the Jets? And what does this say for the Packers as the draft is 2.5 weeks away, April 27th. The clock is ticking. I don't know what the Packers are doing, but the Jets are not going to bluff. That's for sure. They're sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying the show. As you heard Woody Johnson say the other day, that they're going to stay the course. So I don't think they're moving or budging what they're offering. The Washington Post reports that the Memphis police mishandled the incident involving Ja Morant, and Ja Morant looks more guilty now for everything that's going on, the stories in the summertime, all the different stories that have come out about Ja Morant and that gun charge. It's crazy right now. I don't know what the NBA is going to do with Ja Morant as they move forward with this. The Knicks versus the Cavaliers is a lock. And what does that say for the 5 versus 4 in the NBA playoff matchup? We will get into that. Mathew Barzal will start skating with the team this weekend as the Islanders look to hold on to the final playoff spot. They're up 3-1 right now. They just gave up a goal. Tyreek Hill says he wants to retire after the 2025 season at only the age of 32. Mets call up Francisco Alvarez and the debut of the bracket wars. So we're very excited about that. I know you guys are very excited about that, including us. And tonight, Speedy, who are we arguing in the first stakes of the first round?
So one matchup will be a Boston battle. The Jeff will love that. It is the battle of the 2010s New England Patriots against the 2000s Boston Red Sox. And the other matchup will be the 1990s Detroit Red Wings against the 2000s San Antonio Spurs.
What's so interesting about this is Me and Speedy are going to argue. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to talk about all the teams and why these teams were so good in those times, and argue why one of those teams or both of those teams could be argumental on where they are in the top 24 list that we have. And then we're going to vote. And then we're going, if we don't vote with the same teams, if we don't pick the same teams, we are going to post it no matter what on Twitter. And then everybody can vote on Twitter. And whoever wins that vote, that final vote, that team will move on to the next round. So it could be me and Speedy, but we're still going to post it up on Twitter where you could still vote on your arguments of both those teams against one another. Nevertheless, if me and Speedy vote for the same team, they automatically move into the second round. I have a feeling me and Speedy are not going to pick the same team. So get ready for it. It's never alike in any kind of way when we kind of do this. We do this all the time on our 103.9 FM radio show. We never agree to mostly everything. So it's going to be fun. Get ready for it, guys. I'm telling you, this is going to be a really, really fun segment. We're going to do this every show. We're going to pick two teams, two bracket round, what do we call this? What do we call this? 2 rounds, 2 bracket sides. I don't know how we're going to go.
No, rounds is good.
No, because we're going through the bracket. So we're going to go, if there's 8 and 8 on one side, what do we have? 24 teams?
Yeah, there's 24 total teams. So there's going to be 12 seeds on each side of the bracket.
So we're going to go through 2 parts of the bracket every single show. So if it's the first round, we're going to go down the bracket and we're going to pick 2 teams versus one another. And then we're going to argue that. And then every single show, we're going to announce the winner, or we might even know at that particular time who the winner is going to be. So nevertheless, the Twitter feed will be pumping, and we definitely want to see what your arguments to all those teams that we're going to be arguing against one another. So even though everybody thinks the Patriots are going to be dominated, it all depends on where they're seated on the charts and how we argue it. So it's going to be fun. So why don't we get into it? The Aaron Rodgers saga seems to never end, okay? And I know a lot of Jet fans are worried that it seems like Aaron Rodgers is not going to be a Jet. But Woody Johnson spoke the other day, I think it was 48 hours ago, and he said they're staying the course. They're not budging. They're not biting on where the Packers believe they can, or what they think they can get for Aaron Rodgers. What's interesting about this back and forth banter, it only happens to the Jets. It's not the Giants. It's not San Francisco. It's not anybody. It seems like it's always the Jets. The Jets are in the middle of controversy all the time. And it seems like a Jet thing that they're sitting back and waiting and betting on themselves. Now, the only reason why I think the Jets are going to win on this bet is because there are no other teams. I don't care what Craig Carton said on WFAN. I don't believe anything Craig Carton has said that San Francisco is going to be a team interested in making a move for him because, 1, they don't have the money. 2, they have 2 young quarterbacks in Purdy and Trey Lance. There is nothing that sells me right now that any other team is going to be interested in Aaron Rodgers but the Jets. Now, the Packers are just fine to wait until the Jets match their trade terms. What is their trade terms? They think they're going to get a first-round draft pick for Aaron Rodgers when the Jets don't even know if Aaron Rodgers is going to play more than 1 year. And let's say the Jets agree to next year's first-round draft pick. If Aaron Rodgers retires, what do they get back for it? So they're going to give up a second this year and a first next year and get nothing back if Aaron Rodgers only plays 1 year? Joe Douglas is not going to agree to that. Rob Demovsky also mentioned that the Jets are locked in on only giving up a second-round pick in this year's draft and more picks in the future. So the Jets are offering probably another second, maybe a third, in the next 2 years for Aaron Rodgers. There is nothing that tells me right now that the Jets aren't getting Aaron Rodgers. As a matter of fact, today, the Jets signed longtime Packers backup quarterback Tim Boyle. What does that tell you? They're bringing in Packer players. Nathaniel Hackett is going to get the players that he wants, that fits his scheme moving forward. And Aaron Rodgers, they're not going to depend on Tim Boyle as the starting quarterback this year. They have Zach Wilson, will probably be a third string right now, because Tim Boyle will be the backup. The fact is, right now, I know a lot of people are sitting back and probably worried, shaking in their boots, because the Jets just never get their man. Never. And when they do bring in a guy, you bring in Brett Favre for what? A third or fourth round draft pick? He plays a half a season. They go 8-3. They lose against the Patriots on Thursday Night Football. He hurts his shoulder, and the season's over for the Jets. I think this team is different. I think this is differently run with Joe Douglas running this organization. Woody Johnson is stepping back, letting Joe Douglas decide on where this team is heading and what this team is going to be all about in the next few years. And what Joe Douglas is really starting to push forward is that this is a championship-bound team, that this team is going to compete for a Super Bowl. Now, there are a lot of good teams in the AFC. There are. Yeah, the 49ers, we talk about it all the time. And I'm not going to go into it because we all know what the top teams in the AFC. There are a lot of good young quarterbacks. There are top quarterbacks in the division, in their own division. You have the conference loaded with young quarterbacks. Maybe Lamar stays. Maybe he goes to the NFC. Maybe he stays in the AFC. We don't know where he's going. He could be a Patriot. For everything that we know right now, Lamar Jackson could be a Patriot in a couple of weeks. But right now, the Jets have to stay pat. Woody Johnson needs to stay away from the newspapers, stay away from the press. Joe Douglas, if you notice, there is nothing. You never hear Joe Douglas speak except at the end of the season, when the beginning of the OTA start, and after the draft. You see him very little. And the reason why is he does what he does in a quiet fashion. This is what all these big GMs, all the good GMs in the NBA, the Spurs, all these years, have you seen anybody, even the coaches, Greg Popovich, go out there and speak about some of the people and some of the players that they drafted the year before? You never see it. Leon, I will say this. Leon Rose, everybody was complaining that he never speaks to the press, he never says anything. He hides behind Worldwide Wes and all his GMs, vice presidents, everything, his executives. He only speaks once or twice a year. Do you see why Leon Rose doesn't speak to the press? Because he believes in something, he's going to follow through with it, and at the end of the season, if it works or it doesn't work, he will argue it with the press at the end of the season. I am not going to sit here and think that Aaron Rodgers is the savior for the Jets. I will say this. If the Jets land Aaron Rodgers, expect Odell Beckham to sign with the Jets. Expect a lot of different pieces to fall together for the New York Jets moving forward, including Jones, who's probably waiting to hear that Aaron Rodgers is heading to the Jets, and then he's going to sign with the Jets. Why? Because these guys are not getting big contracts this season because either they're a little bit older, not 100% healthy, and they're trying to prove their worth. So they'll go play for a team that has a star quarterback where they can show their ability is still there, where they can get a big contract the year after. Maybe not from the Jets, but somebody else. This is a good move for the Jets. It's good that everybody's talking about the Jets. Oh, the Jets are going to screw up. Blah, 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 blah. Craig Carton speaking all the garbage on his radio show, telling everybody that the Jets are screwing this up. They're going to lose him. He's going to San Francisco. You watch. He's never, and there has not been one conversation that Aaron Rodgers is heading to San Francisco. Not one. For anybody to believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to San Francisco must be on Craig Carton's bandwagon.
Bandwagon that only has 3 compensation picks in the end of the 3rd round to be able to trade this year. So unless you're trading players on your active roster, which the Niners do not seem like they want to do because they like to hang on to their players. They like to sign their players to big contracts. And John Lynch has been very aggressive in doing that, sometimes overpaying him to an extent. You're not going to get Aaron Rodgers. And the Packers already made it clear, we're not trading you in the NFC. So the Niners are going to have to wait a year in order for that kind of thing to happen. To 1, get their own draft pick.
They don't have money, Speedy.
Yeah. And 2, try to manage the rest of these other salaries that they're having to pay. They had to let go of Mike McGlinchey this offseason. He goes to the Broncos. They signed Javon Hargrave, so you replaced an offense with defense. But the rest of your defense...
They paid Hargrave a lot of money, too.
Right. The rest of your defense is still making a lot of money as it was. They gave big money to Travarius Ward. They gave big money to Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Armstead. You just paid Devo Samuel. You got to pay Brandon Ayuk still. So, and you just took on Christian McCaffrey for a bunch of draft picks. So the Niners, where are you going to get this salary cap money? Is there going to be a $30 million upstart on this new Amazon deal that's supposed to happen? And if so, is that going to work to be able to get every other contract to be able to be compensated? So whoever's thinking these 49ers theories for this year,
it's Craig Carton.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's a rumor. That's all it is. It's been only a rumor. How many guys have we spoke to off air that tells us this is just a rumor? It was just something that Craig Carton wanted to throw out there and cause stir for the New York Jets. For some reason, a guy that roots on the New York Jets wants to throw the Jets under the bus in front of everybody on WFAN throughout the New York market because he wants people to talk. That's what it is. And now it's become a story for all these writers in New York, Boston, LA. I've been reading story after story. Now everybody's starting to believe San Francisco's in the mix. They're not.
Yeah, and again, they were a team that was on the radar for a while. When Aaron Rodgers and the Packers first started having their tension in 2021, when the Niners did not know where they were going with the quarterback position, they had all those injuries, they were 6-10, Jimmy G got hurt. That made a lot more sense for the Niners to do it at that time before they signed this $50 million extension. Last year, it wasn't going to happen. Obviously, it was going to be the Broncos or the Raiders or somebody like that was going to trade for him last year, or the Titans. And now this year, it's really, again, just the Jets at this point, because the Niners, again, they committed to Trey Lance. They've committed to Brock Purdy now, who emerged. And they don't have that kind of salary cap space. As far as the Packers themselves, I don't know what your benefit is of trying to wait and stall this out as long as you can. Just after the draft, you're going to be gambling on draft picks for next year that you don't know where they're going to fall. And that's going to be too hard to do.
First of all, the Packers already came out and said that they're not trading him to any teams in the conference. Nobody in the NFC is going to get Aaron Rodgers because they don't want to play against him. And why would you want to put him on San Francisco, a team that's beaten you how many times in the playoffs? And now you're going to play your former quarterback on the San Francisco 49ers. You're pretty much saying, here, go win a Super Bowl with our quarterback. They're not doing that. This is the most ridiculous argument and ridiculous story I've ever read. And the fact that everybody believes it and everybody's starting to stir, that's why the Jets aren't worried. That's why you see Woody Johnson and Joe Douglas say nothing. They're not worried about this. And first of all, the Jets and their organization is very close with the San Francisco 49ers. One of the main reasons why is Robert Saleh is very close with Kyle Shanahan. Why? Because he was its defensive coordinator for 5 years. There is no question that this story is rubbish. It's not true. And I don't want to hear it anymore on social media. I read it all the time. For the last week since this story came out, everybody's saying, all the Jet fans are going crazy. We're going to lose them. We're going to lose them. We're going to stink next year. Of course, it's Jet-like. An organization that's just full of clowns. run by a bunch of clowns. Tyreek Hill said on Totally Offensive podcast that his plans is to play 3 more years in the NFL and then retire in 2025. Hill mentioned he wants to pursue gaming after his NFL career and creates his own gaming business platform. Tyreek Hill is 29 years old and and has only 3 years remaining on his massive contract with the Dolphins. Hill is entering his 8th year in the NFL, meaning he would play a total of 10 years if he retired in 2025. Hill's contract features an opt-out before the 2025 season that would count for the $22.61 million in dead cap. Hill is set to make a base of $43.9 million in 2026 season, the year after he said he would retire. However, all of his $72.2 million of guarantee money will be paid before then. Hill has 598 catches for 8,340 receiving yards and 63 touchdowns in his career in 7 NFL seasons. So I don't know. If he's on the top of his game, why would he retire? He is selling a business. He wants to bring in a gaming business. Gaming is going to be a part of the Olympics in the next couple of years. Esports is everything now. It's going to become one of the biggest sports in the world. It's already. You have 16, 15-year-old kids making millions of dollars gaming. Kids getting full scholarships to go to collegiate schools to play on their gaming teams. Gaming is all of the future, not only for sports and entertainment. It's the future of business. And you see it. You see what Amazon's doing, actually selling games where you can buy the software on their website and their platform. Gaming is the future. So I see why Tyreek Hill wants to jump into it. There's a lot of money in it. He's got a lot of money behind him after getting all that money from the Dolphins. It makes sense. It really does. Do I think he's going to retire in 3 years if he's on the top of his game and has a chance to win a Super Bowl multiple times? And maybe it won't be with the Dolphins. Maybe the Dolphins in a year decide to trade him. He goes to a better team. Maybe he goes back to Kansas City.
Yeah, well, that would be crazy. I mean, even though he's trash talking the Chiefs for their matchup this season, it seems like he still likes a lot of the teammates there. So it definitely isn't crazy to rule it out if Miami does end up having cap peril or issues with keeping Tua healthy or keeping these other guys healthy. I wouldn't rule it out. It is kind of weird, though. You're right. For a player that hasn't had many injury issues in his career, though, already saying, all right, I am going to play for 3 more years and then retire without really an obvious forecast of what the future is going to look like. And the timing of it is kind of weird, too. You would think this kind of thing might come up maybe at the start of free agency. Maybe it'll make the Dolphins more aggressive, but the Dolphins are very aggressive anyway. They traded for Jalen Ramsey. And again, they built up a really good team this offseason and the trade deadline last year, trading for Bradley Chubb, giving him big money. So there's really no ultimatum for the Dolphins to get more aggressive as it is. Again, maybe they're thinking there's a shot for Lamar Jackson, but they already said they were out on that. And again, they're paying Tyreek Hill all this money. Are they going to be able to accumulate money to make Lamar Jackson happy at $48 million a year or whatever he's going to want? So it seems like weird timing as it is. It seems like a random.
He wants $200 million guaranteed.
Right. So it just feels like a random time to make that kind of announcement. I do think it'll end up being something he'll stick to. But again, it's kind of weird just not knowing what the future is going to look like for the Dolphins and what the future is going to look like for him. Maybe he's healthy now, but maybe he starts getting hurt again. Maybe he retires early and then ends up screwing the Dolphins opting out of that contract.
I don't understand any of these commercials. I'm watching the Islander game right now. What is this commercial when they zoom up to this girl, this curly-haired girl wearing yellow? She's in class and she has a mustache and she has a gap between her teeth. What are these commercials? What is selling to the American public? I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. I love that the Islanders are up 4-1 against the Tampa Bay Lightning with going into the third period. I love that because the Islanders need this win. They got 3 more games after this. They have to win every single game. And hopefully Barzal comes back sometime in the next couple of days.
The unfortunate thing for the Islanders is both the teams they need, they're chasing with is the Panthers and the Penguins. They're both blowing their teams out too. The Penguins are up 4-1 on the Wild right now, and the Panthers are up 7-1 on Ottawa.
It's so interesting with this scenario with the Islanders, the Panthers, Buffalo, I mean, Pittsburgh, everybody. And I listen to this scenario. The Panthers and the Islanders coming into today were tied with 87 points. And the Penguins were 1 point back at 86 points. All 3 teams had played 78 games going into today. The Penguins play the Wild tonight, and they're actually up. The Panthers are playing the Senators, which they're up. And the Islanders are playing the Lightning, which they're up. The Islanders' last 3 games are at home. Saturday versus the Flyers, on the road Monday against the Capitals, and at home Wednesday, the final game against the Canadiens. The Panthers' last 3 games are on the road Saturday against the Capitals, at home on Monday against the Maple Leafs, and Thursday at home against the Hurricanes. The Penguins' last 3 games are on the road Saturday against the Red Wings, at home Tuesday against the Blackhawks, and Thursday against the Blue Jackets. Mathew Barzal is set to start skating with the team again this weekend. He is starting to skate privately, especially on Tuesday's workout. Lane Lambert says the expectations is to Barzal to return before the end of the regular season. Who cares? There's 2 games left. They need Barzal. And if the Islanders don't make the playoffs, one of the main reasons is that Mathew Barzal wasn't healthy since February.
And they kept the injury report kind of mysterious too.
They do this all the time. Lou Lamoriello, Lou Lamoriello loves doing this. He did it for Detroit. He did it again for the Devils. How many years? How many years with Jason Arnott and Scott Stevens and Scott Niedermeyer and Claude Lemieux and Martin Brodeur? And I could go up and down those rosters for years. Somebody would get hurt and nobody would know what it is. And they'd be out for a month and a half. And you're wondering where these guys are.
And again, this is a problem I've had with NHL injury reports too. They're very vague as it is. They just say upper body injury or lower body injury or a head injury. And like they can't really plan for it accordingly. Maybe Lou Lamoriello would have done more at the trade deadline if he knew this injury was going to be more severe as it was. Because Mathew Barzal got hurt February 18th and the trade deadline was 2 weeks later. Maybe they do more than just Pierre Engvall after that if they knew they were going to do that. Or maybe they start selling. Maybe they would give up. Because if the Islanders just miss the playoffs, it's the same thing as missing the playoffs as they were selling. So
if you sit here today and you're an Islander fan or a Ranger fan, the Rangers are in. They're already clinched. They're in the playoffs. It gives you agita. Watching this team gives you agita. Definitely for me, I root on the Islanders. I want the Islanders to make the playoffs. I want them to challenge whoever. I don't care if they play Boston. I don't care if they have to play Carolina. Who cares? The fact is, for a team that a lot of people didn't think was going to make the playoffs, got hot in the second half of the season and have played well. And Sorokin's practically stood on his head. This defense has not been amongst the league's best. It hasn't been. Can it be? Yeah, they've got the talent. They do. They have the talent. But again, you sit here losing Mathew Barzal for almost 2.5 months. That's a significant loss. You're talking about a guy, when they added Bo Horvat, he scored 3 goals in 7 games with Bo Horvat or something like that. And he had a couple assists. He had like 8 points in 7 games. He was just figuring out playing with Bo Horvat. That's why they made the trade. That's why they gave up Roddy. And that's why they gave up a first-round draft pick and Bavillier. And now you look at the Islanders, yes, if they sneak into the playoffs, anything can happen. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be the 8th seed, the 7th seed, the 6th seed. That's what makes the NHL playoffs so fun to watch. It's the best to watch because you can't predict who is going to beat the 1, the 2, the 3. Is it the 8th seed that's going to go all the way to Stanley Cup Finals? How many times have we seen crazier things in the NHL playoffs?
Right, because there's also the least controllable aspects. Yes, you could have good goaltending. Yes, you get all this talent on paper with offense, but that doesn't make a difference if you don't control the puck. You're not physical. I've had that issue with the Rangers in the past too, where they build up these teams that are great speed teams, good skill teams, and they don't either shoot the puck enough or they don't hit enough in the playoffs. And that kind of thing could be demoralizing for the Rangers in early rounds of the playoffs. the Rangers seem to do better in the playoffs when they're kind of the underdogs, like they were last year. Not that they didn't have a big point total; they had over 100 points, but they weren't high expectations. They were a young team, and that's the same kind of thing with the Islanders here. They've done better at playing from the underdog perspective, both wildcard teams when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals the last 2 times. Now, the big difference is Trotz versus Lambert. Can they get that physicality in Lambert's system that hasn't been as good, especially like you were saying?
It's been more offensively.
Right,
That's
more
what it's
offense,
been.
but not as much defense. And they've given up a lot of grade A scoring chances because of that. And will the Islanders avoid doing that in the playoffs will be another question. I'm with you where I think that if they play the Hurricanes, they could definitely make that an interesting series because Carolina's offense has not been great at certain points this year. They've been not as deep offensively as they were last year. But they do possess the puck a lot. So the Islanders who don't possess the puck a lot are going to have to do a little better job at that.
It doesn't matter who they play in the first round because anything could happen. Anything. You have a hot goalie like Sorokin. He could stand on his head. He could play. He could knock out the Boston Bruins. Everybody thinks the Boston Bruins are a sure thing, and they're a fantastic team, a fantastic, talented team, and they have the best goalie in the NHL. They do. This year, he is going to win goalie of the year. He has been fantastic. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be good in the playoffs. How many times have we seen a goaltender who was the best goalie in the regular season is one of the worst goalies in the playoffs?
Right. We've seen that many times with Carey Price with Montreal. We've seen that how many times with Roberto Luongo too.
Roberto Luongo.
Yeah, a lot of the times these goalies have this pressure on them because it's one of those things where they're dependent on so much, and the Islanders cannot put Sorokin in that kind of situation in order to do that because the Islanders' depth when it comes to their offense is not something they can rely on to do a lot either. And their depth has been a little better since Barzal's gotten hurt. It's gotten tested more because of that, but still will it carry over into the playoffs too when they have to face these tougher teams on a consistent basis. A team like the Hurricanes does have a very good defense. So that's going to be a tough test for these offensive players. A lot of these younger kids and also this fourth line that's a veteran team.
631-672-3108 is the number. We're waiting for our friend BetSperts and 4for4 fantasy football and betting analyst John Daigle. He'll be coming into the feed in just a few moments, so we're very excited. This is the fifth time since fifth time John Daigle's coming on the show, and the last time he was on, I think it was like 5 months ago. So John's a good friend of the show. Guy knows his stuff. If you're a fantasy sports fan, you have to listen. You have to read his stories, and he has a podcast right now. So he's all over the place, and he's in Chicago hanging out with his, I'm sorry, girlfriend. He doesn't want me to say fiance or his wife. He said, whoa, put the brakes up. We've only been together for more than a year. So, okay, Johnny. Hopefully, maybe he'll tell me that they're engaged.
Yeah,
Who knows?
He said he was also doing some speaking today at
Good for him.
at Wrigleyville.
Really? What's Wrigleyville?
I guess it's something right near Wrigley Field, I'm guessing. We'll ask him when he comes in.
Oh, that'll be fun. John Daigle, the media speaker that he is, but excited to have him on. He's a good friend of the show, like I was saying, and a smart guy. If you guys like football and he knows a lot about baseball too, so he knows his stuff, and he's an inside writer. He's worked for everybody. I think he worked for NBC as well.
NBC Sports Edge was his previous company when we first had him on the show, and he was one of their main fantasy guys,
main writers. Yeah. So very excited to have him on the show. But to finish up with the NHL playoffs, it is definitely open. The Eastern Conference is definitely open. The West is pretty much settled in. I think the last seed is still open for grabs, but the Eastern Conference is so open because I think the Eastern Conference is so much better than the West. So I think the Western Conference is really top heavy, and the East is just flat out good from top to bottom. And now you're seeing teams like Buffalo and Detroit, teams with Steve Yzerman building that team, leaving Tampa and help building that Detroit Red Wings team. Now you're seeing Detroit start to get better. They're signing their young players. So watch out for Detroit and Buffalo. Buffalo just signed a bunch of their young players after the trade deadline. So I expect Buffalo in this offseason to be open to bring in some big names, and they could be as dangerous as any team, and Ottawa too. Another team that could be very, very dangerous next year as well.
A lot of people had them as a playoff team this year, Ottawa.
Ryan Reynolds is buying the team, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I was hearing about that for the last couple of weeks, which is very interesting. I would have never expected that. But yeah.
Well, he was a big hockey fan. He grew up in Canada, and he always wanted to run his own hockey team. and now he has his chance. Every movie that he's in, he's skating, he's doing something with the sport of hockey. He loves hockey. So I'm actually excited. The NHL should be very excited to bring in another owner of that magnitude, a face of an organization that is a pretty funny guy as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing if this all goes through, and it seems like it is.
Yeah, and the Ottawa Senators ownership has been notoriously cheap too. So you wonder if they're getting this bigger, flashy name, like somebody like a Ryan Reynolds, that players are going to want to play for. I don't know how much of an impact that would have, but again, if these players like his movies, then who knows? Maybe that kind of thing could help spark the team. And a team that already has a lot of offensive talent. They made a huge trade in the offseason for DeBrincat and Tkachuk, obviously, on that team. Josh Norris will be back from injury after he was out for the season this year. And they just need some goaltending. Can they get their hot prospect to come up and maybe a little more defense? They could definitely be a powerhouse.
Absolutely. And here's another thing. I know all the Met fans are going crazy right now. They can't stay healthy. They lose their catcher now could be for at least the next couple of weeks. They called up Alvarez, which everybody is sitting here and saying, well, they should have never sent him down. I believe the whole point of sending Francisco Alvarez down was to give him more time in the minors, just to give him confidence. So when he gets called up again, he takes sole, custody of that catching position. And I believe he is now. I think that was the whole plan. Send him down, build confidence. Omar gets hurt, and now you have Alvarez, and you expect him. This guy was the number one prospect in the major leagues last year. Going into he didn't look good in the playoffs, okay? He didn't look good when they called him up. He was a rookie catcher. A lot of pressure on this kid. And I understand when you look at Alvarez, and he's done very well in AAA right now. He has 4 hits, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs so far in AAA this season. Alvarez struggled in spring training. He did. Beatty didn't struggle. They sent him down. I don't want to hear from Mike or anybody, all you Met fans, saying that it was smart that they sent Beatty down. No, it wasn't. Because when you send a kid down most of the time, he loses confidence. Because when you have a spring training, when you're batting almost 320 and you practically led the team in hitting throughout spring training, yes, the last couple of games, Beatty didn't look good. Why are you sending him down? So you have more control? You have Steve Cohen running the team now. This isn't the Wilpons or the Coupons, whatever you want to call them. You have Uncle Stevie. All you Met fans complaining, we couldn't get Carlos Correa. And now all of a sudden, all the Met fans are talking about Ohtani. What makes you think he's leaving the LA area? I think he's going to the Dodgers. I don't care what Uncle Stevie offers him, because the Dodgers are going to match it. So I know all the Met fans, they were all upset when they didn't get Carlos Correa, and I thought they were getting Manny Machado. And then Manny Machado, before the season, before spring training, he signs a big 11-year contract, 12-year contract worth about $350 million. He's going nowhere. Now you're hearing Soto's name, and Soto doesn't want to sign with the Padres. There was a story coming out. He has no interest in signing with the Padres. So what does that mean? They're going to trade him. They're probably going to trade him. Are they going to trade him to the Mets? What do the Mets have to offer? They have, right now, the Padres have control of him this year and next year. What do the Mets have that the Padres would be interested in getting Soto? Remember, the Padres got Soto from the Nationals. They gave up like 5 of their top prospects. They have one of the best farm systems in baseball, top 3. They gave up like 5 or 6 prospects. 3 of them were in the major leagues top 20 or something like that, 25. What do the Mets have?
Basically, their entirety of hitting prospects is what they're going to have to give up for somebody like Soto, because Soto is going to get that kind of trade offer from anybody as it is. So there's going to be competition. And like the Padres, when they first traded for Soto, remember, they weren't the favorites at the time to get Soto either. So they had to probably even make the offer a little extra too. And the Mets don't have the pitching prospects to do that. So you're trading a lot. You're going to have to trade probably 2 guys on the major league roster in order to make that kind of thing work.
Alvarez played 5 games with the Mets at the end of the season last year and had 1 double and 1 home run in 12 at-bats. That's not bad for a catcher. Alvarez's defense has been a question mark in the minor leagues, but the Mets say they want him to be the catcher, not the designated hitter. Alvarez was the number 1 prospect in the MLB at certain points last season, but didn't get called up until the last week of the season. So the Mets are protecting their young players. Obviously, that's what the Mets are doing. But is protecting them the right thing to do? That's the question. And if you're a Met fan, you're going to say, Epler knows what he's doing. This is a guy that came from the Yankees organization. He knows what he's doing. He's a Brian Cashman disciple.
Who's done everything kind of the opposite of Brian Cashman. So it's kind of tough to tell with Billy Epler what the sample is for that. Now, I do like some of his contracts. I thought some of the ones he gave for the hitters were good. But at the same time, I thought they also could have done more at the trade deadline. And I also think they could have done more to address pitching depth. Not necessarily star pitching, but pitching depth. And in terms of these current young players, yeah, it's definitely interesting that not all of them. There were four hitting prospects that you look at. Vientos, Ronnie Mauricio, Beatty, and Alvarez. Beatty and Alvarez being a little higher up in the rankings for the MLB pipeline. But I'm surprised one of them did not get called up with a lot of these other veteran guys on the team right now, because a lot of the other veteran guys struggled in spring training too. And they lost a lot of the guys they got at the trade deadline. Good riddance to Darren Ruff. He did nothing for the Mets anyway, so fine. But a lot of these other guys, Naquin, and then they bring in Tommy Pham, who had a nice game, the last game of the series on opening weekend, but still, he's not great. Like, you're really going to stop the development of somebody like Beatty or somebody like Alvarez in order to do that? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Alvarez could be a DH too and still catch at other points. Like, you don't want him to just grow as a DH. Fine. I'm not saying to never catch him, or never DH him, but still, you want him on this roster to get acclimated to major league at bats now, because remember, they brought him up at the last week of the season. That's a lot of pressure on a young kid.
I will say this, and I don't know if anybody has, a problem itching their back, but during the show last night and now even tonight, I have this big itch in the middle of my back, and I'm trying to itch it, but I don't have one of those back scratchers, those long sticks. Have you ever seen one of those things with the hand on the bottom of it?
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to itch my damn back. I'm using the back of the chair right now, and I can't. I really can't.
You're trying to get the sweet spots.
You know what? I should use my mic, with the mic stand to try to run my back.
That'd be very interesting.
Well, I'm trying to get the itch out. I'm trying, but the Mets are a giant itch right now in the National League East.
Yeah. Well, getting swept by the Brewers, definitely not ideal, and allowing all those home runs that they did. So an offense that's not overly powerful.
They're just not hitting right now, but it's early, guys. And I know a lot of Met fans are like, oh, what's going on? We thought that this team was going to compete. I still believe this team is going to compete. Okay. I cannot see, and I think the Mets will get hot when it gets warmer out. They'll get hot and they'll win. They'll start winning. I know a lot of people aren't happy, and right now the Braves are playing good baseball. But here's the thing: Philadelphia isn't playing good baseball.
Nope.
The Nationals aren't playing good baseball, and neither are the Marlins. The only team that's playing good baseball right now in the division is Atlanta. And Atlanta last year, the Mets had the lead really going into the second half of the season. And Atlanta had to play catch up. And Atlanta had a lot of injuries last year. Now they're almost fully healthy, but they lost some big pieces in the offseason. They did. So I still think there's a lot of questions with Atlanta and what Atlanta needs to do at the trade deadline if they need pieces to fill in. But the Mets have the money. I don't know if they have the prospects. I don't know what they're interested in doing if they need to make a move. I still think they need a closer. I do. I still don't know if they have solved that problem, losing Edwin Diaz for the season. And I do believe they're going to need another bat. It seems like they do, but Pete Alonso's not hitting right now. He's not. And Lindor, who was very hot in the spring training games, he was playing great baseball. He hasn't been hot right now in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Nimmo's the only consistent hitter right now for the Mets to start the season.
Which is crazy. It's crazy to say that, but he got a lot of money. So if you're a Met fan, you should be happy that at least he was worth every penny that they're paying him. But it's very, very interesting to see how the standings are going to lie as the season progressively moves forward. But how about the Rays? They're 6-0 right now. I mean, we heard Ben Heller. We had Ben Heller on the show, and he says that this team's a lot better than what it shows on paper. And boy, oh boy, have they been really, really good. We expected the Yankees to be where they are, and the Blue Jays and the Orioles. Even the Red Sox are 3-4. They're not playing bad baseball. They're
They
almost
did well
500
against the Orioles. That helped them in the beginning of the season. I think they took 3 of that first 4 series or something like that. But then they just got swept by the Pirates. So you take it with a great assault where the Red Sox are at.
It's crazy. We thought the White Sox were going to take control of his division this year. I mean, there's no more Tony La Russa. I mean, that didn't work out over there in 1 year. And the Guardians, again, with that pitching staff and with Bieber and the bullpen that they have, one of the best bullpens in baseball, as we saw against the Yankees in the playoffs, this is going to be a hard team to beat. I mean, that pitching staff is as good as anybody in baseball. The problem is this lineup going to hold up throughout the season? They added another bat or two in the offseason. It gives them a little bit more power, but is it enough to beat the Yankees or the Astros or even the Seattle Mariners, who are not playing well, by the way, right now?
Yeah, Guardians are beating them a lot, too.
Yes.
They actually did well against that Seattle bullpen, and they've scored a lot of runs in each of those games. I think the Mariners won the first game of that series, and Cleveland was winning out after that, and like you're saying, doing very well with their offense, which is not normally their strength. We'll see if they can keep it up, but yeah, the White Sox definitely haven't gotten it going yet either.
How about the Angels, man? Maybe because this could be the final year for Ohtani and Mike Trout. Mike Trout's playing good baseball right now.
Oh, yeah.
He's playing really good baseball, MVP status, and he hasn't stayed healthy for the last 2 years. But if Mike Trout stays healthy for at least 145 games this year, he will be up for an MVP. There's no question. Ohtani and him could be up for an MVP. They could be 1 and 2. But I'll tell you this, Aaron Judge is hitting right now. So is Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres is one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. He is one of the, I know it's early. I know it's only 6 games in, but Gleyber Torres is almost hitting like 380. I mean, he's got 2 home runs. He's a second baseman. No, he's not doing steroids.
No, you got to check if he's doing amphetamines, though. That'll help his coordination.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, because everybody thinks that steroids is so much better than amphetamines. Yesterday,
random drug test, Gleyber Torres.
Oh my God!
Go check on him. Check if he's using spider tack too. Maybe it'll help his bat grip strength.
They might be.
But again, would that actually make a difference? Because it make it harder for him to release the bats.
The one thing the Mets need to worry about is that pitching staff.
Oh
yeah, that pitching staff is not going to stay healthy all season. Max Scherzer is a shell of himself. Okay, he's not the same Max Scherzer he was when he played for the Nationals and he played for Detroit. He's not the same pitcher, guys. He's not. The Mets are paying him for what he did in the past. And Justin Verlander. Have we seen Justin Verlander?
Nope.
We're 7 games into the season, and Justin Verlander hasn't thrown 1 pitch. And the Mets are paying him $43.5 million this year. What does that tell you? I understand Steve Cohen, and everybody keeps telling me Jacob deGrom doesn't look good. Who cares about Jacob deGrom? Are we really going to compare Jacob deGrom to Justin Verlander? Come on, guys.
There was a scenario with neither one of them. There's a scenario of going after younger pitchers.
It's called winning. It's called winning. When Jacob deGrom was on your team, they were winning. It doesn't matter if he was doing it or not. When he was on the roster, they are winning. When he is not on the roster, they're not winning. Now, it's still early. We're 7 games in. There's 162 games in the season, and it's getting hot. As we saw today, it was like humidity was at like 77 degrees. I mean, so it's going to be hot this summer, and I expect to see a lot of good baseball because as it gets hot out, you're going to see more balls, more home runs, and more hits. That's what you're going to see, hopefully.
Well, yeah, and eventually you're not going to see as many of the rapid pace of the stolen bases that we've seen so far either. Because
I don't know, you're going to see that this year because of the big bases as they enlarge the bases this offseason. No more shifting, so you can't really clutter the steal because how many times have we seen the shortstop and the second baseman like pretty much cluttered down the middle to run that double play. They can't do that anymore.
Well, yeah, for the double play, but sometimes with the shifts though on the steals though, if you have 3 infielders loaded to the one side, sometimes it's harder for another infielder to get over too. So it's going to be interesting to see how they factor that in. But I was kind of in the thinking with Matt Joyce though too when we had him on last week. He was saying that it's a little bit bigger, but how much is it going to impact the strategy of the game?
Obviously, it's impacting it a lot because we're seeing guys that don't really steal bases. I mean, Gleyber Torres has like 6 stolen bases already or something like that.
Right.
I mean, he's on pace to have like 60 stolen bases. I don't think he's going to have 60 stolen bases.
I'd be amazed if anyone gets to 40.
He also wants a big contract in the offseason. Now, they're probably going to arbitrate him again. But if they can come to an agreement, I think the Yankees will sign Gleyber Torres, especially if he has a very good season this year. The question is Pereza going to come up a lot sooner than later? We haven't seen a lot of some of the players that the Yankees were talking about going into spring training yet. We haven't. Bader's hurt again. When's Bader coming back? I mean, Bader was a big part of the Yankees' run in the playoffs last year. He had like 5 or 6 home runs. They need a legit center fielder. I'm not saying Aaron Judge can't play it. You're putting Aaron Judge at risk playing center field all season long.
That was the biggest problem I had with the 9-year contract, too. If you're going to try to have him paid like a center fielder, he's going to have to play some center field, but you don't want to have to do it where you're going to have to rely on that. And Bader was the other guy to help that kind of thing out. Estevan Florial, they called up. I was thinking maybe he could play some center field, too, if he started in certain games. He wasn't going to play every game because he has to still earn it on the major league level, but still, you definitely don't want to run Aaron Judge into the ground that early in the season playing so much center field.
The Washington Post reports that the Memphis Police mishandled 3 different reports of incidents with Ja Morant, which he was involved with a gun. Okay. The reports mentioned Memphis police mishandled 3 reports by misrepresenting or failing to identify alleged suspects and witnesses at the scene of various alleged incidents that either reportedly included Morant or his family members or associates. In the incident report involving the altercation with Joshua Holloway during a pickup basketball game in the summer, the police never issued a search warrant. So there's a lot as far as this Ja Morant story is coming out and starting to grow legs and come to the surface. Ja Morant has a problem. He does. And there's no doubt in my mind the NBA needs to cut down on this. Ja Morant, he's not Gilbert Arenas. He's not bringing his gun to the stadium or the locker room. He hasn't done that. At least that's not what we know of what he has done. But this guy carries a loaded gun everywhere he goes in Memphis. This guy is not from the hood. He's not. This guy is very well respected. He went to a private school. His parents had great jobs when him growing up. He comes from a very good family, Ja Morant. Why is Ja Morant carrying around a gun? I understand Memphis, certain parts of Memphis are dangerous. Why are you going to the dangerous parts? You're an NBA superstar. You're one of the best players in the league. Why are you going into places where you're putting yourself, your friends, and your family at risk? And then you're carrying a loaded gun and pointing it at everybody. Dancers, and you're pointing at kids on a basketball court because you're not getting your way. How do you live with yourself every day knowing that there are guys praying to have the talent that you have? Right. That have worked harder than you to get where you're at, and you're there, and you're one of the best players in the world, and you can't keep a gun out of your hand. That's the problem. Now, I understand that I think his name is Gavon Busby.
That's the shoe store owner place.
The salesman at the shoe store where Morant and his mother were involved in an incident claimed he spent an hour hidden in the back of the shoe store feeling very scared after Morant threatened him. Also said he never heard from the police after making his initial statement, and the police couldn't even list Morant's mother as a suspect. Neither the NBA nor the Grizzlies reached out to any of the alleged victims of these incidents, which is mandatory for all incidents involving police, according to the league's policy. How could you? And I've been saying this about Adam Silver all season. 2-3 years ago, I thought Adam Silver was the best commissioner in sports.
That's not saying much.
I really did. Honestly, it's Gary Bettman. He's changed the game of hockey, even though he gets booed every time he's up there at the draft.
Oh, you didn't boo him when you were there?
No.
Oh.
Honestly, I don't know Gary Bettman personally, so I don't really give a crap. I really don't. I don't like how the NBA treats people. And I don't like how the NHL treats people sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But nevertheless, I have nothing against Gary Bettman. I have nothing against any of these guys. I know Adam Silver can't control his players. He can't. He has LeBron James demanding things, telling people how it is. You have Kyrie Irving, his anti-Semitic views, and you're a Jewish man and you're not going to step in and do something about it? Suspending Kyrie Irving for 9 games or 7 games wasn't enough. Okay.
Indefinitely.
And now he's over there with the Mavericks. How many games has he won? 6? 6 out of 15 games? I'm sure the Mavericks don't care if he's testing the waters in the offseason.
He's winning the game of ruining another locker room culture.
But Ja Morant, he comes from a great family and a good organization. The Memphis Grizzlies built that team. They were a crappy team. Really bad. And they rebuilt it. They drafted well. They brought in Jackson. They brought in Morant. They signed players and put players around them, the right players. Now they're one of the top 3 seeds in the Western Conference. One of the best teams in the NBA.
I think they're the only team that has, 3 second-round picks playing 20 minutes a game. And a lot of those second-round picks have done that for the last 3 years, too.
I mean, there's a lot to say about this team and this organization. This is a good run organization. But when you can't control your star player, there's a problem. There's a big problem. Because if the player thinks he's bigger than the team, then you don't have a team. You have a player. A disgruntled player. And you're not bigger than the game. No player is bigger than the game. Michael Jordan said it best when he was in the league. And to me, he's the greatest athlete I've ever seen play in any professional sport.
And again, there's an element of leadership that's needed, especially in the NBA, more than you see with any other sport. Because you look at football and baseball, they have a lot of players on the roster. You're going to need multiple leaders. You're not going to need one obvious leader. And hockey, you get that a lot with these coaches. That's why a lot of these younger coaches don't get as many NHL jobs as you see any other sport, with younger coaches managers taking over. The NBA, the coach, I mean, I'm not saying Taylor Jenkins is a bad coach, but they don't have as much power. They don't have as much say as these players. Like you were saying, Adam Silver lets these players really take over these teams. And it could come from the worst, where you could cause all this drama, like you were saying with Kyrie Irving. They had it earlier in the season in October with the whole anti-Semitic, all that crap. And now you're getting it again with all this stuff with the Mavericks, and it's dragged them down to the ground. And the Ja Morant cannot do the same kind of thing to the Grizzlies too. And the Grizzlies might have to take action if more of these incidents start coming out, because he has to get paid soon. So maybe they have to trade him. Who knows at this point?
It doesn't make any sense. And the NBA needs to step in and decide what they're doing with him. Ja Morant needs to be suspended. Maybe not this year, because the playoffs are here and they don't want to hurt their brands. They don't want to sit one of the best players in the league down in the playoffs when the Memphis Grizzlies have a chance to go to the championship game. They could. They're a top 2 seed right now. They're right now going to be the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Home court advantage, and having a great player like Morant, an electrifying player like Morant, is definitely going to draw people to watch them on TV.
They're also a pesky, feisty team, too. They've started a lot of sparks against the Warriors.
They're young.
Yeah, they started a lot of sparks against the Pelicans. So if they played in the playoffs against either of those two teams, it could get very interesting, too. Dylan Brooks is getting a reputation like Draymond Green is a bad guy. He already got suspended already this year. He's getting all these technical fouls. He had that incident against Donovan Mitchell. Like, this is a team that people are going to want to see for many reasons. And it would definitely hurt a lot if Ja Morant isn't there. But again, he's doing stupid things. So, I mean,
they're not going to suspend Ja Morant. They're not.
No, they're not.
I don't believe that's going to happen. But I will say that in the offseason, they have to decide on the proper actions on what they need to do with this kid. Either he needs to get help because they did. He was speaking to somebody, and then they took him out, and then Adam Silver sat down with him, and then 3-4 games later, he's in the NBA again. That's not enough. Look what they did to Ron Artest. Look what they did to that guy. Was Ron Artest wrong for what he did in Detroit? 100% was. 100% was. Punching out fans, but the fans were throwing things at him. And what are you going to do protecting yourself as an athlete? You're going to protect your team. You're going to protect yourself. Was he right for what he did? No. It was embarrassing. He hurt the brand of the NBA. And the NBA suspended him for the rest of the season and the season after that, really. He barely played. And he didn't do anything but throw a couple of punches. This guy is carrying around guns and pointing it at people.
And it's 4 different incidents now, too. You're talking about...
What's it going to take? He's going to kill somebody?
You have a shoe store incident, you have a pickup basketball game, you have a volleyball game, and now you, like you're saying, you have the gun incident at a nightclub in Denver. Like, that's 4 incidents. That's not something that is coincidental. That's not something that can be taken lightly by anybody, whether it's the Memphis Police Department, whether it's in Denver with them.
Let me tell you something. If I was an NBA player and I decided to go to a strip bar and strip in front of everybody, okay? Strip all the way butt-ass naked on the bar, okay? And I'm a superstar like Ja Morant. Am I going to get in trouble? No. It would go all over the tabloids. What is the NBA doing? Why can't they control their own players? Blah, 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 blah. That's what happens. But I didn't pull out a gun. I'm not trying to kill anybody. I'm just being an idiot. That's what I'm being. I'm drunk, whatever. I don't drink, by the way. But nevertheless, if I did, and I was an NBA superstar, and I'm dancing on the bar naked, everybody's going to get pictures. It's going to be all over the tabloids. And then they're going to be like, oh, that kid, Errol Marks, he can't control himself. He can't, he indecent exposure, whatever the hell it is. He's pulling down his pants in front of everybody. What should we do with him? What are they going to suspend me for 20 games? They won't suspend him carrying around a gun for more than 9. This is a problem. And David Stern is not running the organization anymore because I'm telling you right now, if David Stern was running this organization right now, I'm telling you, Ja Morant would have been suspended for the rest of the season.
Now, he was there with Artest. Do you remember how long he got suspended?
The whole year.
The whole year? All right. Yeah. That's going to be.
And he missed almost a full year after that.
Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely a big difference when it comes to disciplinary measures. That's for sure. And again, for somebody like Ja Morant, who's a repeat offender, these are 4 incidents, not just 1. And threatening incidents. He chased down a 16-year-old kid and, again, a vulnerable guy at a shoe store. And like you were saying, just incidents that are going to have multiple witnesses in it, too. Multiple people involved. And now his family's getting involved, too. There was the other guy that was suspended or he was banned from the Pacers arena for that whole incident. He's roping these other guys in, too. And now they're getting off, too, which makes no sense.
Nobody in professional sports should be carrying around a gun. Ask Plaxico Borges.
Oh, yeah.
Ask Plax what he did with his career because the Giants were the best team in the NFC, and especially in the NFC East. And then he decides to go to a club with a loaded gun and shoots himself in the leg. And then gets thrown into jail for 2 years because Mayor Bloomberg wanted to make a statement.
Oh, yeah.
Why can't Adam Silver make a statement with some of these players? Why? Because he's afraid he's going to lose his job. There are stories coming out that he might leave the NBA. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. That he was getting an offer to be, I heard, the CEO of Disney or something like that.
Wow.
That's what I heard. And that there was a good chance, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, that he could leave and take over as the CEO of Disney.
Wow. I mean, Disney and the NBA do have a tight partnership, so I guess that end of it's not surprising, but still, wow, that's a pretty powerful position you're giving up. I wonder what the NBA has in mind to replace him in that case. That's interesting. I would have never thought that.
Yeah, well, that's what I heard.
Especially like you're saying with a player-run league, the way it is. You think players would love it.
Who knows? I don't care. Yeah, honestly, the NBA in professional sports, they have the players running the leagues. They have to control it. The ownership and the commissioner needs to run the league. And you see what Rob Manfred's trying to do. He changes the rules. I think the guy's an idiot, but he's trying to change the rules. And at least they have some kind of control over the players now. Bud Selig made it a joke when he was the commissioner of baseball. He let steroids go on and on and on. He didn't give a crap. And then when it came out and the politicians got involved with it, and the president got involved with it, then he put his tail between his legs and hide under the desk. That's what he did. And now he's in the Hall of Fame. How could the MLB put this man in the Hall of Fame because, quote unquote, and by the way, how did they vote him in when he let steroids go around? Because he kissed the press's ass? George Steinbrenner never kissed anybody's ass. He helped baseball. He helped baseball move forward. The guy's still not in the Hall of Fame.
Somebody must have too tight of a relationship with Bud Selig to let him
I'll
in.
tell you what they have with Bud Selig. I'm not going to say it on national radio.
Yeah, there's something a little shady.
I'll tell you what they're doing.
Something a little shadier, I'm presuming.
I'm telling you, man. I can't sit here and attack anybody for my own self and my own thoughts, because I'm not Bud Selig and I'm not the commissioner of baseball. But what I do know is when you say you don't want something because of the fact that it has hurt baseball, why did you let it go on for over 10 years? That's just my question, bud.
And since then, you've gotten a lot more incidents in random
Hence
spurts.
the reason why we've had Spader on the show, and he's attacked the MLB. And MLB players love him because he protects the MLB players. Bud Selig and Rob Manfred has not protected anybody. All they care about is themselves and owners. That's it.
We'll go back to our petition for Theo Epstein for MLB commissioner and Ryan Spader.
2024, baby.
And Ryan Spader for head of the Baseball Hall of Fame. He'll be the one to know the difference between steroids and amphetamines, unlike our friend Jeff that still doesn't decipher the difference with that. And how it'll help them more.
Yeah. And by the way, Ben says I was right. Silver is on the short list for Disney CEO. So if Silver winds up getting that offer, he'll probably leave the NBA and it'll probably go to somebody else.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
And I think that would be great for the NBA because Silver has just been an absolute joke. He has been the laughing stock of the NBA. He really has. And to let LeBron James run the show. How about we do this? How about we have no commissioner and we'll have LeBron James? He'll leave basketball. He'll retire and he'll take over basketball because he wants to own his own basketball team. Let him become the commissioner. And then he'll be a players commissioner. And then he can let everybody get the $100 million contracts. And then they could just absolutely bankrupt the NBA.
Oh, yeah. We need a commissioner that'll be able to discipline Kyrie Irving. LeBron James is definitely not the element of doing that because all LeBron James does is protect him and stand for everything that he stands for, even though Kyrie Irving allegedly claims that he didn't. But what are we trusting out of that guy's mouth?
Him, Kevin Durant stood for what Kyrie Irving said.
Yep.
Kawhi Leonard didn't say much when they asked him. I mean, it's just an absolute appalling thing when you see all these athletes who know what right and wrong is. As you know, with Black Lives Matter and everything that was going on over the last couple of years and kneeling to the national anthem, everybody had their own thoughts to that. But when it comes to anti-Semitic views, nobody cares. Who cares? That's the problem. And that's the problem. The platform is about playing the game, not talking at politics. I never speak about politics on this show. You know why? Because I have no say in anything that's going on in the world. I have no control over it. Not Speedy, not anybody. Not even the president right now has control of what's going on in the world.
There's also no need to bring up a random movie, too, like Kyrie Irving did. You want to mention something about a case that was tragic, a sad thing like the shootings that have gone on, fine. But Kyrie Irving brings up a movie and tries to advocate for it. It's just so stupid.
we're waiting for John Daigle. Is he coming in?
I don't know. I haven't heard from him yet. Maybe
It's
he's
all right.
running late from his speech. I don't know.
Well, if we don't get John Daigle on at 11 o'clock, we will be talking to the Broadway Hat podcast and Rangers and USA hockey writer Kyle Hall. So maybe we'll, if John doesn't come on before that, we'll just have to get him on another time. But John's a very busy man, Mr. Popular over there.
Yes, no doubt.
He loves coming on the show. And I don't know if you guys remember how many times he's been on the show 4 times, and he's very funny. And he knows his stuff, and he likes to have fun with us. We like to, kick bricks. So it's not just sports that we talk about. We talk about other things, and he's an interesting cat. So
maybe he's scouting his next wedding to crash.
Oh God, that's another thing. What he likes to do. He likes to crash weddings. John Daigle and his boys like to crash weddings. I did too.
I know. I remember you mentioning that last time. Maybe we need if there was ever a case where time travel existed, you and John Daigle could simultaneously compete.
When I was in my early 20s, and I'm a DJ, and I do a lot of private parties, me and my friend used to, on Saturdays, we always tried to find something to do, and there was nowhere to go except at nighttime, and that was, I'm usually DJing at one of these clubs or something like that. But in the daytime, we always wanted to find something to do. So where could we go, in the summertime? We can go to the beach. I wasn't a beach fan. I wasn't this, and I like to surf here and there, but I didn't want to deal with the sharks. But so what I decided to do, I said, listen, let's dress up in a suit. And this is before Wedding Crashers came out, by the way.
Right, that was 05.
This was before Wedding Crashers. And what we used to do is we crashed weddings. We went to the Mediterranean Manor in Patchogue. We went to all different places, West Babylon, all over Long Island. And we even went out to the city. We found out this big wedding, this big church, and it was a very rich Italian family. And we knew of the family, and we drove all the way out to the city, and believe it or not, there was a couple open seats, and we pretended we were part of the family. We were even taking pictures and family pictures. It's so funny.
Did you scatter it out based on who looked like your friends so you could pass for them as doubles or something like that?
No, I didn't.
Wasn't that in depth?
No, I didn't do that. But
okay.
We were actually asked to take family pictures. We said we were like third cousins. Nice. We actually gave ourselves different names. We used their last name. Mm-hmm. I forget. It was some Italian name, but I called myself Anthony, and my friend called himself Vito. So Anthony and Vito. It was pretty funny, but it worked, and we had free food, and we did the after party, and at that particular wedding, the bride kept asking me, what part of the family, and who's your father? What aunt or uncle is your father? And I used to be like, I found out that Daisy was her aunt, her second aunt. So I was like, I'm Daisy's nephew. So I'm your fourth cousin or third cousin or something like that. I had to think of something, but it worked. And I actually, I think we did at least 12 or 13 wedding crashes, and it was great. We also did some Sweet 16 crashes too.
There you go.
Yeah.
If I ever did that approach, I would take the Spaceballs approach. I would go with I'm my father's brother's cousin's nephew's former roommates.
Well, the one time, I will say this, there was one time we went to a really luxurious wedding in the vineyards, and there was security there, and you had to bring in your invitation. So what we did, and this is, I advise you not to do this. Before you go through the gates, they have a picture of the invitation of the family and everything. I took a picture of the invitation. Remember, phones were not like they are now, digital and stuff like that. So what I did was I kind of took half of it out, and I said I took a picture of the thing. And when we went up there, I showed him the invitation on my phone.
Proof of presence.
We were invited. I told you, but it was pretty funny. But yeah,
good thing they weren't investigating for mailing tags or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
when did this package actually come in? We'll find out.
Knicks and Cavaliers locked in for 5 versus 4 in the NBA playoffs. I will say this. If you're a Knicks fan, it's exciting. anybody that doesn't think that this is exciting, I don't know if Julius Randle is going to be healthy. I don't know. Okay. And honestly, I don't want Julius Randle anywhere on the court in the playoffs. He has been a really bad playoff player for the Knicks. Go look at his numbers.
Oh, yeah.
He has not been good. And coming back from an injury like this, and he hasn't shot a basketball in about a week, almost 2 weeks, would scare me too. This is a guy that likes to shoot him up. He averages about 22, 23 shots a game. And that would worry me when your team is playing good basketball right now. Quickly, Obi Toppin, Grimes is playing good in the last 6 games, over 20 points. I mean, they're all playing good basketball. And now you bring Randle back. It hurts the chemistry. The Knicks are 11th in the NBA in both points per game with 115.9 and points allowed per game with 112.8. In efficiency rating, the Knicks are 4th in offensive efficiency at 117 and 19th in defensive efficiency at 114. The Knicks are third in the NBA in rebounds per game with 46.6. The Knicks have committed the 4th least turnovers per game with 13. The Knicks have the Knicks have averaged the 3rd most free throws per game with 25.6 and have made the 7th most free throws per game with 19.7. The Cavaliers have the best scoring defense in the NBA, only allowing 107.1 points per game. But their scoring offense is only 24th in the NBA at 112.4 points per game. The Cavaliers are 7th in offensive efficiency rating at 115.7 and are 1st in defensive efficiency rating at 110.1. The Cavaliers are 6th in the NBA in team field goal percentage at 48.9%. The Cavaliers have committed the 7th least turnovers per game at 13.3, and the Cavaliers have committed the 7th least fouls per game at 18.9. So a lot of information right there, and it says they're very evenly matched. I mean, the Cavaliers are a little bit bigger. They're a little bit younger, but I think the Knicks have more superstars on their team. They do. If Julius Randle is healthy, he's averaging 25, 10, and 7 or 8. The Cavaliers don't have a guy on the team that does that. Now, Donovan Mitchell's the best player on the team. And Garland's a really good player, too. Oh, yeah. He's fantastic. They have a lot of good guards. But what Jalen Brunson has given the Knicks this season, it absolutely withstands what Donovan Mitchell has done for the Cavaliers. Leadership means everything in the playoffs. And you heard Luka Doncic say it this past week, how important a guy like Jalen Brunson is on the court. Not just by what he does on the court, but his leadership off the court. And that's what the Knicks finally have. They have leadership. They brought Josh Hart in. The enthusiasm, the energy that he brings to the team. And Mitchell Robinson finally healthy for the second half of the season, coming back after the All-Star break with the finger injury, the surgery. He's played pretty good basketball. He is going to play a big part if the Knicks want to advance in the Eastern Conference.
I think he's the most impactful player for this series because of the Cavs' size and the Cavs' defense. You look at somebody like Evan Mobley, who's a great shot blocker, rebounder. You look at somebody like Jared Allen, who Brooklyn Nets fans know is a very good shot blocker and excellent rebounder. And Mitchell Robinson is really going to have to weather that kind of storm because the Knicks' power forward types are much more of the opposite types. Isaiah Hartenstein is more of a finesse guy. He's a good shooter, good passer, but not as good of a raw defender. And then Obi Toppin, who I like, he's a smart basketball IQ guy, and he's a good defender for his size, but it's still kind of undersized in comparison to those guys, Mobley being 6'11", and Jared Allen being a 7-footer. It's going to be hard for them to match him up one-on-one unless Thibodeau does some switches or some double teams. But again, it's very hard to double team a team like the Cavs that has a good amount of depth too. Now, the Knicks' depth is better offensively off the bench. They average the 6th most bench points per game, and Cleveland's bench is kind of middle of the pack when it comes to scoring. But the Cavs still have some good bench guys as well. Karis LeVert is kind of their fifth option as a scoring type. And then they also got the kid Okoro, who they drafted 5th overall, a couple picks before Toppin went to the Knicks. So they're definitely an evenly matched matchup. And then you're right, the backcourt matchup is going to be very interesting. Jalen Brunson against Donovan Mitchell or against Darius Garland. Neither of them are like top tier defenders, but Jalen Brunson's definitely improved from where he was with Dallas in Thibodeau's system. And Mitchell and Garland have both improved this year with JB Bickerstaff. So 2 very good defensive-minded coaches too. Very interesting. And like you're saying, which Julius Randle are you going to get? You get one that's going to shoot him out of games. You can get one that's somewhat efficient.
I also believe that Tom Thibodeau is the better coach. He's been here before. He has won before. Now, I'm not. He did win an NBA title with the Celtics, but as a defensive guy.
Assistant, right.
He was the lead defensive guy on the bench for the Celtics. And a lot of people believe he was the coach of the Celtics when they won the championship because he was the guy calling the plays in the timeouts. But Tom Thibodeau has proven this year that he could take a young team and play the young players this year. He's honestly played the young players more than I've ever seen him play young players everywhere he's gone. He was forced to play the young players with the Timberwolves because they were all young. It didn't work out over there. Then he brings his own players over there. It didn't work. Then they were trading pieces and adding pieces. It didn't work as the coach and the GM of the organization. In Chicago, he weighed out his welcome. He did. With Derrick Rose, and Derrick Rose is still, could you imagine Derrick Rose is still on this roster and we haven't seen him at all this year? Because Emmanuel quickly is developed and you're seeing Grimes developed. All the young players are developing and they don't need, McBride's played more than Derrick Rose. So you're seeing that the transition of the youth and the young players that the Knicks have coming off the bench, and one of the best benches right now in the NBA, especially one of the best rebounding benches in the NBA.
And also quickly, a big reason why he's been elevated to that potential 6th man of the year status too is because he's ball handled on that second unit so well too. And then he did well in those games when Jalen Brunson was hurt too, as a essentially primary point guard too, to make sure that they can keep everybody else in place and not really mess with RJ Barrett's positioning where he has to take over as a ball handler. Julius Randle, they sometimes had him ball handle, but it looked really ugly when he was trying to do it. It looked like he was like dribbling in quicksand, but even so, they didn't want to mess with the wing depth that they already have, the shooting guard, the small forward guys in place, because we know Thibodeau is very stubborn in his rotations too. And that's something that they didn't want to mess with when they didn't have the point guard available to them at that moment. So Quigley, who's probably the quickest in terms of the dribbling and quickest in terms of the shooting, makes sense to put him there in that spot, even though it's not ideal for what his game is strength-wise the most.
Lyle, yes, the Islanders win 6-1 tonight. If you're an Islander fan, you should be very excited. The Islanders, if they can win out their games, they're in. They're in. And I believe they, besides the Penguins, they have the second easiest schedule out of all the other teams. The Penguins have a very easy schedule. And usually when they have an easy schedule, it doesn't work out for them. But the Penguins always sneak into the playoffs. Every year they find a way back into the playoffs. So the Islanders just have to keep winning. They're coming into a game on Saturday. Who are they playing? They're not playing Washington on Saturday. They're playing Washington on Monday, I think.
Yeah, they're playing the Flyers. Saturday.
They should beat the Flyers. They match up very well against the Flyers.
Everyone matches up well against the Flyers. If they don't beat the Flyers, there's something wrong.
They have the Flyers and Montreal. Those are 2 games guaranteed to win. The Washington Capitals game is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. And the way all the teams have won tonight, or practically won, you have to win.
Right.
You have to win.
And you look at the Penguins, the hardest one they had was tonight against Minnesota. Minnesota is trying to fight for that Central Division title, so they're playing with a sense of urgency too. And they've been one of the hottest teams in the NHL in the second half of the season. And the Penguins are able to blow them out at home. So that was the one that they really needed to make that work, because you're right. They have 2 very easy games at the end of the season with Chicago and Columbus. Florida's got a little more of the middle tier matchups. Both teams, both the Florida Panthers and the Islanders, have to play the Capitals, which is very interesting. The Panthers play the Capitals on Saturday, and then the Islanders will end up playing them on Monday. So they could be the ones to play the spoilers, but you're right. Penguins and Islanders definitely at this point have the schedule advantage to be able to do it. Just a matter of, one, if they are able to get good goaltending on the Penguins end, and on the Islanders end, if and when Mathew Barzal comes back, how effective he will be, and how effective the team chemistry will really be as a whole too.
Yes, and that's the thing. When you look at where the Islanders are and what the Islanders could put on the ice if Mathew Barzal is there, they add another scorer, another talented scorer, something that the Islanders have not had really since February. So Mathew Barzal plays a big part of the Islanders' approach in the playoffs and going into the playoffs, because you have Mathew Barzal, another goal scorer. You put him with Bo Horvat. You have, to me, a top first line that you haven't had for the last couple of times they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. And now the Islanders are in a position this year that if they could sneak into the playoffs, they could be spoiler. They could play spoiler for some of these teams that everybody thinks are Stanley Cup contenders, like Carolina or Boston. All these teams that everybody's, Boston's impossible to beat. They're unbeatable, unbeatable, or whatever the hell it is. I will say this. The last time Boston played the Islanders in the playoffs, the Islanders beat them 4-2.
Right.
So, and that was a good Boston Bruins team. And that was in the second round. So, and that was when they made the trade for Taylor Hall.
Right.
So, to me, the position that the Islanders have put themselves winning tonight is a very good position. Very good. Because now the hard part of their last 6 games, they had to play Tampa twice and they had to play Carolina. They lost they lost against Tampa, they lost against Carolina, and now they beat Tampa at home. Now I think you're playing at home on Saturday against Philadelphia, then you're going away against Washington, and then you're going back home against Montreal in the final game of the season, which probably and could put you in position of making the playoffs.
Right, because they still have the 1-point advantage. So the Penguins still definitely have to win those easy games. They don't want any leeway, or even just getting a point in some of those games, even losing in overtime, just playing close could be a very interesting thing to watch too, because Florida's definitely got the toughest road because they have to play the Capitals, the Leafs, and the Hurricanes. And again, those teams might have clinched by then. We'll see. But again, they're still going to be tough teams. Toronto with their offense lethal, and the Hurricanes with their defense lethal. It's still going to be tough, especially if they're still fighting for the Metropolitan Division, depending on how the Devils and the Rangers play towards the end of the year. The Rangers, they played a little better. The Devils, they're still staying with them, and they're not far behind the Hurricanes either. So if the Hurricanes need to play for something, that's going to be hard for them too, especially at home.
It looks like John Daigle is not going to be on tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the first half of Bracket Wars until we have our second guest, which will be Kyle Hall at 11 o'clock. So, Speedy, you ready?
Yep.
Let's go.
Bracket Wars.
It's time for Bracket.
Bracket.
It's time for Bracket Wars.
All right. Are you ready, Speedy?
Yeah.
All right. So what's the first round that we have?
So the first matchup we got today is the 1990s Detroit Red Wings against the 2000s San Antonio Spurs.
That's the first round?
That is the first matchup we got.
Okay, so let's go into the Detroit Red Wings. And Detroit in the 90s were a dominant force with Stevie Yzerman. Stevie Yzerman in 91 averaged they played 80 games, 51 goals, 57 assists, 108 points. Sergei Fedorov and Nicholas Lindstrom, they had one of the dominant teams in the NHL. Bob Probert, may he rest in peace. They had everything stacked with great goaltending too. And they had one of the greatest coaches in NHL history with the team that year. So actually, if I'm not mistaken, in 90-91, the head coach was Brian Murray, okay? And Doug McLean was the assistant coach that year. But Scotty Bowman was the guy. He was the face. He was the voice. What are you looking? Why are you making faces? Are you all right over there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. You're making faces over here. I know what you're doing. But you look at right now, you look at what Detroit was that year, in particular, the weapons that they had. They were stacked from the beginning. And with the record they had that year, they were one of the best teams in the NHL. So, I mean, Speedy, what did you think?
See, as Detroit was one of those things. Detroit was very interesting because they had not as many division wins in terms of that tough Central Division, but in terms of the point totals, they still were very high. They were close to 100 points pretty much every year in that span. And they played in a very tough Central. You talk about a team like the Colorado Avalanche that won multiple Stanley Cups in that time. The Blackhawks were another team that was very tough. They made the Stanley Cup in the early 90s, and they kept going on from there and being a tough one in that division. Now, what's interesting is once they brought in all those Russian players too, and that really set more depth on that team in comparison.
In 1994 and 95 season, 70 points in a shortened season, 48-game season, lost to the Devils in the Stanley Cup. In 95-96 season, they had 131 points, won the President Trophy, lost in the Western Conference Finals against the Avalanche. And remember, the Avalanche went on to beat the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals. In 96-97 season, they had 94 points, second in the Central Division, beat the Blues and the Ducks and the Avalanche in the playoffs, and swept the Flyers in the Stanley Cup Finals. In 97-98 season, 103 points, second in the Central Division, beat the Coyotes, beat the Blues and the Stars in the playoffs, and swept the Capitals in the Stanley Cup Finals. So they won back-to-back championships. And then 98-99, 93 points, first in the Central Division, lost against the Avalanche in the second round of the playoffs, 4-2. Scotty Bowman, obviously one of the greatest coaches of all time. Key players, obviously Brendan Shanahan, Sergei Fedorov, Stevie Yzerman, Nicholas Lindstrom, Igor Larionov, and Chris Osgood. This was one of the best teams, one of the best hockey teams of this era. In the 90s, it was the best hockey team in the era. When you talk about teams that they loved to play against, the Chicago Blackhawks, and then you talk about the Avalanche. The Avalanche had Patrick Waugh, and they had Peter Forsberg and Joe Sakic. That was one of the best teams put together, and Claude Lemieux. So both teams were so prolific and so good. So when you look at the Red Wings and what the Red Wings did in the 90s, they were as dominant force as even the 80 teams, the 1980s of the Islanders. People forget how good the Detroit Red Wings were in the 90s. They were fantastic. They had tremendous amount of talent on the team. They brought Alexander McGillney in a trade. They built this team through youth and their farm system and drafting, and then bringing veterans as good as they did in the 90s and just completely dominated.
Yeah, and you also look at a sport that like hockey too, where it's dynasties are going to be tough to create as it is, but the Red Wings were still one of the few after those other big dynasties that were consistently good for a long time, and then they had their streak of 25 straight in the playoffs, started with that team, really built the reputation of that team back to its form from the original Six era too.
So when you look at the Red Wings and they're a number 7 seed on a bracket, I think they were a fantastic team. And when you try to compare them to some of the great teams of the 80s, like the Islanders, even in the 90s and in the 2000s with some of the other great teams, the Avalanche being a great team of the 90s as well, they were one of the more dominant forces in the NHL in the 90s. The number 10 seed, the Spurs, in the 2000s, 2002, 2003 season, they were 60-22. Remember, in 99, they came off winning a championship. It was a shortened season. Michael Jordan retires. Everybody remembers that. The Bulls win their final title with Michael Jordan, his 6th title in 98. And then he retires because the Bulls couldn't figure out the contract situation. Scottie Pippen was traded, and everything started falling apart for the Bulls in 98. So Tim Duncan gets drafted in 90, I think it was 97, 98. And then finally, David Robinson finds his counterpartner, and they win a championship in 99. Then it took all the way till 2022, 2023 to really build that team. They eventually draft Manu Ginobili in the 2000 era. I think it was in 2004, 2005 when they drafted Manu Ginobili, and then they drafted obviously Tony Parker. But in 2002, 2003 season, they were 60-22, tied for first in the Western Conference, beat the Suns and the Lakers and the Mavericks in the playoffs, and beat the Nets 4-2 in the NBA Finals to win their second in 3 years. 2003, 2004, 57-25, second in the Western Conference, lost to the Lakers in the second round of the playoffs. That was the great Laker teams with Kobe Bryant. And I think that was the last couple of final years. No, it was actually when Shaquille got traded in 90. He signed with the Lakers, I think in 96, 97. So that was at the tail end of the Lakers dynasty with, I think, Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. And then eventually Shaquille O'Neal goes to the Miami Heat. 2004, 2005, they were 59-23, second in the Western Conference, beat the Nuggets, Supersonics, and the Suns in the playoffs, and beat the defending champions, the Pistons, 4-3, to win another championship. So that's 3 in almost 6 years. 2005, 2006 season, 63-19, first in the Western Conference, but lost to the Mavericks in the second round of the NBA playoffs. And then in 2006-2007 season, 58-24, third in the Western Conference, beat the Nuggets, Suns, and Jazz in the playoffs, and beat the Cavaliers in the NBA Finals as they swept the young LeBron James Cavaliers team 4-0. Greg Popovich, one of the greatest coaches of all time. And then key players, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Robert Horry, who won, 9 championships?
Yeah.
Bruce Bowen, one of the best defenders, one of the most underrated defenders in the league, and then Steve Kerr, obviously, the Golden State Warriors head coach, so who also won a couple of titles with the Bulls. So those were the key players. Tim Duncan is one of the greatest power forwards, if not the greatest power forward to ever play the game. You can't really argue that. You want to argue Karl Malone and maybe even Kevin Garnett, but I think Tim Duncan, he was Mr. Quiet, Mr. Banker, and he was a classy winner. And he won 5 titles. And Tim Duncan really stood for everything. And by the way, you forgot David Robinson on that list, Speedy. So I think when you look at Greg Popovich, when you compare of the greatest coaches of all time, and when you think of Greg Popovich, you think of who, Speedy? Jackson. You think of Pat Riley. You think of all these guys. And you can put Greg Popovich right there with some of the greatest coaches of this era.
Right, and you also look at the influence that Popovich had when it comes to bringing in a lot of these European players. And also, unfortunately, you could say whatever argument you want to take on this side of, he pioneered the load management concept that a lot of these guys do now. Now, how much of that influences as when it comes to this bracket where you're playing against hockey players that are playing pretty much every day is another question, too, because I think
they play 82 games. Both teams play 82 games. So.
And you're looking at a case where Tim Duncan was still progressively good even later in his career because of that kind of thing. But right now on these particular teams, this first team is as good defensively as you can get. As good as Detroit's defense was in the hockey standards, this team was consistently good defensively pretty much every year with those defenders.
Tim Duncan's one of the greatest players of all time. 15-time All-Star, 15-time All-NBA, 97-98 All-Rookie of the Year, third 3-time MVP, Finals MVP, 2-time MVP, 5-time NBA champ, 15-time all defensive player, all defensive on the all defensive team, 97-98 Rookie of the Year, and then obviously 90 to 2000 as the MVP. This guy is one of the greatest players of all time, one of the greatest power forwards of all time, one of the greatest top 10 players of all time in the NBA. And to have a player like that, and Tony Parker, you forget how good Tony Parker was. And when they won that title against Miami, if you remember that, and that this is a little bit ahead of ourselves, but when they beat Miami in, I think it was 2014.
Yeah, that was
2014.
Final MVP
year. Tony Parker played a big part of winning that championship. He really did. And it was Tony Parker's team at that point. So, and Manu Ginobili was one of the biggest shutdown 6-man guys we've ever seen play in the NBA. So, one of the greatest basketball teams of the last 40 years.
And again, you look at a team that has great international value with those players too. Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili both, one was a European-born player in France and Tony Parker, and then Manu Ginobili in Argentina too. Changed the game for what it is, a lot of it now too. So also playing good defense in a league that's a lot more offensive in that game. I think Greg Popovich definitely helped revolutionize those guys. And Tim Duncan, I have as my top 5 players of all time. I think he was a fantastic revolutionary guy for the power forward position as well.
Oh yeah, he was fantastic. And he was an all-world defensive player too. He was the anchor of his team's defense. And to win 5 titles in 15, 16 years, it's unbelievable. How many teams that you can name? And I know you would say the Bulls of the 90s, fantastic. And I don't think there was anybody better than the 98 Bulls. I think that's the greatest team I've ever seen, and probably one of the top 3 greatest teams ever play. So, but you can compare that Bulls team to this San Antonio Spurs team with great coaching. You have Popovich and Jackson, and then great players, Tim Duncan, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Tony Parker, and Dennis Rodman, and Manu Ginobili. So both teams could be comparable. So, Speedy, who do you got moving on in this bracket?
So I'm going to go with the Red Wings for 2 reasons that I have here. One of which I think you're right. The NBA Western Conference was definitely very tough, but I also think the NHL Western Conference was kind of tough too, and that cancels out. I think the teams that they played in the finals were a little better than the teams that the Spurs played in the finals. Yes, the New Jersey Nets at that time were very good, but again, the Knicks great run as an 8 seed, but they're still an 8 seed. Like, that's still going to be down. And the Cavaliers, like we say all the time, like LeBron played with a bunch of nobody. So it was LeBron against the world kind of thing. I think those Flyers teams in the 90s and those Washington Capitals teams were very underrated in the 90s too. The Detroit beat takes them down. So I'm going to go with the Red Wings here.
I'm going with the Spurs. And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to go with the Spurs. They beat the Lakers in 2002, 2003. Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal. The Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki and what they had and what they provided over there. Those were fantastic. That was yeah, they beat the Nets. And yes, it's just Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin. I don't care. The fact is they had to go through the Lakers. They had to go through the Lakers year in and year out. And the Lakers were one of the best teams of that era. And you talk about Kobe Bryant, everybody compares as one of the greatest to ever play the game. You have to look at that. Also, when you look at what they did and how they did it and how they dominated 60 and 22, 57 and 25, 59 and 23, 63 and 19, 58 and 24. They barely lost. They dominated, and they played in a Western Conference with great talent. The Western Conference in the early 2000s was as good as any Western Conference we have seen over the last 30, 40 years. It was dominant. When you talk about the Lakers, the Mavericks, the Suns, there were so many good teams in the 2000 era. So I'm going to go with the Spurs. And by the way, as good as Steve Yzerman was, as good as Sergei Fedorov was, and Nicholas Lindstrom, 3 fantastic players. Stevie Yzerman, one of the greatest centers of that era. Oh, yeah. Tim Duncan is one of the top 5 players to ever play the game, top 10 players have ever played the game. I don't believe any of those Red Wing players were anywhere close to the top 10 of all time in their respectable league.
Now, you don't think that they're, in terms of just overall hockey players, I'm not talking about just positions specifically, that none of those, like maybe 4 or 5 of those guys are top 50 all time, though?
Yes, but I could say that about the Spurs. Manu Ginobili is the best 6 man to ever play the game. I absolutely believe it. And Tony Parker is one of the most underrated point guards to ever play the game. And he, at one point, was never respected as one of the top 3 point guard in the league when he should have been. He was everything. He was the heart and soul of those teams.
Now, again, you say Manu Ginobili might be the best 6 man of all time, which is fair. Does that matter as much as a starting player that plays more, too? Because there's a lot of
NBA is different.
Players,
it was honestly, when you look at the NBA and you look at the NHL, when the NHL in the 90s, there was a lot of great players. There was. But in the 2000 era and the transition of dominance from the Bulls, we didn't know if we were going to see a dominant force like the Bulls we saw in the 90s. Nobody thought that. And the Spurs really transitioned that. When Michael Jordan retired in 98, and he came back with the Bullets, obviously, but nevertheless, everybody thought it was done. There was not going to be any more dominance. Then Detroit won a couple, but it was really the Spurs that transitioned the game, really changed everything. Them and the Lakers. The Lakers won 3. Okay, and then Kobe won a couple of with
2 by
Gasol.
himself,
Yeah. So, well, he didn't win it by himself.
Well,
He had
Gasol,
He had Gasol. He had Artest. He had good players, but the dominance of the Lakers and the Spurs really transitioned the game in the early 2000s.
Now, you don't think as well that the Popovich have doing more for the players helped those kinds of players out more in terms of like their overall.
These players had to develop.
Okay.
And the game changed. Remember, it became a more offensive game in the 2000s, the early 2000s.
Oh, of course.
With the rule changes, the 3-point shot played a big difference in the league from what it was in the 90s. So, yeah, it was the transition of the game. When the Red Wings were dominant, and listen, the 90s were the best time for hockey. Like I said, I mean, the Rangers won in 94. If you're a Ranger fan, you love that. But Chicago was great. The Buffalo Sabres were good. Actually, they were good.
Yeah.
The Islanders were crappy. The Islanders were crappy in the 90s, but nevertheless, Zygmunt Palffy and those teams. But I mean, the Vancouver Canucks were a great team. So there were a lot of great the Calgary Flames with Theo Fleury, and there were a lot of great teams. So, and the Red Wings did do it in a dominant conference in a dominant division. But I think it's the Spurs, because I think the dominance of what Tim Duncan did in the mid-2000s, or really the early 2000s, and really the transition of the game, and then adding Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili to that list of talent that they had, and Greg Popovich, really, and the dominance. Look at the wins. I mean, how many teams had more wins than the Spurs did from 2000 to 2010? The answer? None. So I think the Spurs were the most dominant basketball team in the early 2000s. So I'm going to go with the Spurs.
All right. Well, we'll wait for Kyle. You want to do matchup number 2 now?
We're still waiting for Kyle?
Yeah, 11 o'clock. He's supposed to be on.
All right, so let's go.
All right, Jeff, you'll like this one because it's a whole Boston theme matchup. So we have the Patriots of the 2010s, so the teams that won Super Bowl 49, 51, and 53, against the Boston Red Sox teams of the 2000s that broke the curse of the Bambino.
In 2012 and 2013 season, the Patriots were 12-4. They were the number one seed in the AFC, like they were every single year. They beat the Texans in divisional round, lost against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. That was when the Ravens actually won the championship. In 2013, 2014, they were 12-4 again. They were a number 2 seed in the AFC, beat the Colts in the divisional round, lost against the Broncos in the AFC Championship, and the Broncos went on to win the Super Bowl. Then you look in 2014 and 2015. Again, they were 12-4. They were number 1 seed in the AFC. They beat the Ravens and the Colts in the playoffs, and they beat the Seahawks. Yes, if you remember that game against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl with a terrible play call by Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
2015, 2016 season, they were 12-4. They were a number 2 seed in the AFC. They beat the Chiefs in the divisional round, lost against the Broncos in the AFC Championship. I think that was the year that the Broncos won. I'm sorry. That was the year that
15-16.
Yes, it was when they won. In 2016, 2017, they were 14-2. They were a number 1 seed in the AFC. They beat the Texans, the Steelers in the playoffs, and beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. And that we all know that.
Yeah,
we all know that game. 2017, 2018 season, they were 13-3, number 1 seed in the AFC, beat the Titans and the Jaguars in the playoffs, and lost against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And then 2018, 2019 season, they were 11-5. They were the number 2 seed in the AFC. They beat the Chargers and the Chiefs in the playoffs and beat the Rams in the Super Bowl for one of the worst and one of the most boring Super Bowls you could ever watch.
Yeah.
Yes, Bill Belichick is one of the greatest coaches, if not the greatest coach to ever coach in professional football. I think he is. And then Tom Brady. Some people say he's the GOAT. I would say he's right behind Joe Montana. You can argue your points, whatever. Important keys to what that team was: James White, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, Devin McCourty, and Dante Hightower. These were great pieces to those teams and that dominance of that era of the Patriots, especially from 2010 to 2019. So I mean, you could go back and forth on what Tom Brady and the numbers Tom Brady put up. He was breaking records. As a matter of fact, I think he broke Peyton Manning's single season yards record. I think it was in 2019, if I'm not mistaken.
And then he broke the touchdown record, I think, the next year,
Yes.
a little bit later, because Drew Brees broke it in 2019. Then Tom Brady broke it from Drew Brees again.
Yes. Tom Brady did a lot of crazy things. He was unbelievable. He won 7 championships, and you really can't take that away. And when you're trying to compare Tom Brady to the Red Sox, you have David Ortiz, and you have, Manny Ramirez, or whoever you want to compare to those teams. None of them could even come close to a guy with Tom Brady's stature and what Tom Brady did for the NFL and what he did for the New England Patriots.
What's very interesting about this matchup, I think, is the way the Patriots had to change other players so many times. We see Bill Belichick, Jeff says it all the time, they trade a player a year too early when you least expect it. Look at all the undergoing of that secondary that they had to go through from their 2011 team that lost to the Giants, and their 2014 team. They brought in Darrelle Revis and Brandon Browner, and then all of a sudden you get Malcolm Butler and Stephon Gilmore as the next year. So which end of it you're going to get? And same thing with the offensive line.
And a great thing about the Patriots, every single year, especially from 2010 and 2019, they had one of the best secondaries in football. And it has a lot to do with Bill Belichick. If you remember what Bill Belichick did in the 80s and the early 90s for the Giants, he really transitioned the game. He changed the game, especially the corner position. And that's why the Giants won in 1990, I think, against the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
They beat the Buffalo Bills because of the secondary and the way the secondary played. There was no doubt they had a crazy front seven, but their secondary was the reason why they won the Super Bowl in 1990.
They always have good secondaries, even going back to that Giants team. And there has never been a strength for the Giants since then. And the Patriots, it's always been a strength for them. They find corners left and right. Even like we were saying, even the draft this year, the 5th round, it's very interesting. As far as the Red Sox, in terms of the operation and the way they do, they had to do it a lot with free agency, bringing in Derek Lowe. They made the trade for Pedro Martinez, and a lot of these pitchers were not as much homegrown as the hitters were. David Ortiz even wasn't homegrown. They had to bring him in from the Twins. So even they had to do a little bit of the operation a little different, but I think it's a lot easier to do it with salary cap in comparison, or harder to do it with salary cap in comparison to free agency.
And just remember, don't forget about Wes Welker and Vince Wilfork. These are guys that Wes Welker's a borderline Hall of Famer. Vince Wilfork is going to the Hall of Fame. So there are a lot of Gerard Mayo, he was a great linebacker for the Patriots, and Brandon Spikes and all those guys. We haven't even Patrick Chung. There were a lot of great players on these Patriot teams. And every year there was a different roster, a different team. They had a different running back, Kevin Falk one year. And they had another running back, Corey Dillon. And every single year they transitioned the game. And that was what made the Patriots so special. They didn't ever have the same roster. They would have a different roster every single year, different offensive weapons practically every single year, except obviously the Rob Gronkowski. Everybody else was different. How many wide receiver, how many transitions of wide receivers did they have? So that's what made the Patriots so special, it's how they did it. And they had guys as they added players, and they drafted players like Matthew Slater, who's one of the best special team guys of all time. So, and then they had the offensive line was always good. They always found a way with Logan Mankins and Kyle Love and as a defensive tackle, and Matt Light. So
Light was tremendous.
Yeah, so they had a lot of good players on this roster. It wasn't just Tom Brady. It wasn't just Rob Gronkowski. So this was a great roster. As far as the Boston Red Sox of the 2000 era, this was a good team. I understand a lot of people can argue what they did and how they did it, but and this was around the steroid era too. Yep. So I know a lot of people are going to look at it with David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez, and they're going to say, well, they shouldn't have won these titles. Whatever the case
being
is.
Manny.
2003 season, they were 95-67 in the regular season record, third best in the American League. Beat the Athletics in the ALDS and lost against the Yankees in the ALCS. In 2004 season, they were 98-64 in the regular season, second best in the American League, beat the Angels in the ALDS, beat the Yankees in the ALCS, and then swept the Cardinals 4-0 to win the World Series. And by the way, their first World Series. 2005 season, by the way, that was the curse of the Bambino. 2005 season, they were 95-67 regular season record, tied for second best in the American League, swept the White Sox 3-0 in the LDS. In 2006 season, they were 86-76 in the regular season record, missed the playoffs. 2007 season, they were 96-66 regular season record, tied for the best record in the American League, swept the Rangers in the ALDS, beat the Indians in the ALCS, and swept the Rockies, if you remember, the Matt Holliday Rockies 4-0 to win the World Series. In 2008 season, they were 95-67 regular season record, third best in the American League, beat the Angels 3-1 in the ALDS, lost against the Rays 4-3 in the ALCS. And then in 2009 season, they were 95-67. They in the regular season record, they were third best in the American League, got swept by the Angels 3-0 in the ALDS. Grady Little, if you remember, after he really coached his team one year, and then he was fired after Tim Wakefield gives a home run to Aaron Boone in extra innings. And then Terry Francona took over this team in 2004, and he changed everything for the Red Sox. Theo Epstein, one of the great GMs, and really changed everything for the Red Sox and the Cubs. That's the transition, and that's what you really look at when you try to compare what the Patriots did and what the Red Sox did. Theo Epstein took over a team that has never won. They didn't win a World Series. He had to change everything for this organization, and he built this team from top to bottom. Key players to these teams: David Ortiz. Who traded for David Ortiz? Theo Epstein. Manny Ramirez, Pedro Martinez, Kurt Schilling, Nomar Garciaparra, Johnny Damon, and Kevin Youkilis. So many good players, and people forget. And remember, people forget about Dustin Pedroia. I mean, there were a lot of good players on this team and on this roster for those 10 years.
And Pedroia came on in a time where they lost Johnny Damon and they lost Nomar Garciaparra. So there's a lot of pressure in that element too. Pedro Martinez goes to the Mets. They've had to go a whole new pitching staff in a sense. And the Red Sox have done such a great job with this turnover thing too because of free agency for partially, but it's not like they were spending massive amounts of money every single year. And I would say 13 was a little more impressive than 07, but you still have to give them a lot of credit for where they got.
Keith, first of all, they won championships. They won 3 championships
in the dead ball era.
They weren't called the World Series. It wasn't called the World Series.
Right.
So they fought. It was the championship. It became the World Series. I think, when did it become the World Series?
I want to say like 1915 or something like that.
Was it the 1915?
Yeah, because they had a lot of turnover with the name changes. I know when the Cubs won, it wasn't technically called that. They were trying to decide on the name for many different reasons. It was a very weird time in baseball. But I think with the Red Sox.
All right, it was the first time they won a championship in over 100 years, close to 100 years. Okay,
right.
It was like 80 or 90 years, whatever it was. It was a long time.
Yeah.
So to change that for everything, since the curse of the Bambino, Theo Epstein had a lot to do with it. So did Terry Francona. So, okay, you want to call it the World Series, Keith? Fine. But what I'm saying is Theo Epstein and Terry Francona changed everything for that organization, and they didn't win a championship for a very, very long time. It was over 60, 70, 80 years, whatever it is. So that's what I'm saying. So whatever.
All right, so we got 2 minutes before Kyle comes on. Let's make our picks for this one. I'm going to go with the Red Sox for that reason, the pressure of trying to win the World Series in that time when, again, they had so many good teams for so long and found so many weird ways to lose, like especially as they did with the Mets too. And like I said, the turnover from the 04 to the 07 team, sometimes that doesn't happen overnight. You talk about it all the time. The AL East is so good. Even the 06 season, they missed the playoffs. They're like 690 win teams in the American League, so I'm not going to hold that against them. I also think the Patriots had 2 easy cakewalks in the AFC in Super Bowl 51 and 53 season. The best team, the second best team I thought that year was the Raiders, and our car got hurt. And Super Bowl 53, they barely played anybody besides the Chiefs to get there. And their opponents in the Super Bowl, I don't think were as good as the Red Sox opponents in the World Series. So I'm going to go with the Red Sox.
I'm going with Tom Brady and that New England Patriots team. They won how many Super Bowls between those years? 3?
It was 3 in the 5 years.
They won 3 in 5 years. Do you know how hard it is to win Super Bowls? How many teams in history won 7 Super Bowls? The Patriots won 6. The Pittsburgh Steelers won 6. They won 3 in those 5 years. It's so hard to win Super Bowls. I know I'm not saying it's not hard to win World Series like the Red Sox did in those years, but what the Patriots did in that time span was fantastic. When you go up and down the rosters and the transition of those rosters, different rosters every single year, different running backs, different wide receivers, different offensive linemen, different defensive linemen. How many different defensive linemen went from one team to another? This was every single year was a different 53-man roster. And Tom Brady was the lonesome guy over there, and Rob Gronkowski. It was really Rob Gronkowski every single year and Tom Brady. That's it. And then Wes Welker went somewhere else. He went to the Broncos. And then they drafted Julian Edelman. And then Matt Light goes somewhere else. And then Logan Mankins goes somewhere else. Everybody went somewhere else. With Vince Wilfork went to the Texans. Everything changed. And every single year, but they still found a way to win with the same coach, with the same quarterback. And to me, that's the most amazing thing out of it all. Now, I'm not saying what the Red Sox did and how the Red Sox did it in a time that they didn't win a championship for close to 100 years. That's great. The curse of Bambino, I understand it. But what the Patriots did in such a short span, winning 3 out of 5, was just remarkable. Absolutely. So I'm going to go with the New England Patriots. So there you go. So we both picked 2 different teams in the bracket.
We're going to disagree.
So what we're going to do is we're going to post it up on our Twitter page.
It's already there. People have already started voting.
And you can start voting for the next 48 hours, and we'll announce it next week who moves on to the next round. So there you go. Bracket Wars, the first 2 bracket parts of our first round are done with the Detroit Red Wings and the 90s Detroit Red Wings and the early 2000 Spurs, and then you have the New England Patriots of the 2010 to 2019, and then the Red Sox of 2003 to 2009. So now you see it. You can vote on Twitter When we come back, we are talking, and we will be talking to the Broadway Hat podcast and Rangers and USA hockey writer Kyle Hall here on the Sports Loudmouths.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I'd like to report a bear hug.
Uh-huh, okay.
Well, we were building a bonfire, and I saw some, dry brush and leaves around, so, I said to move the bonfire somewhere else, and out of nowhere, Smokey Bear shows up and hugs me.
So you noticed some wildfire hazards and moved your bonfire to a safer location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Smokey, all right. He likes it when people help prevent wildfires. It hits him close to home. Not everybody gets the hug, my friend. So that's pretty special to get a hug from Smokey Bear.
So it was him. Hey, guys, I told you it was Smokey.
Okay, well, congratulations, my friend. And thanks for calling. There are many ways to prevent a wildfire. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. This is the Sports Loudmouths.
631-672-3108 is the number. You are listening to the Sports Loudmouths. I'm your host, Errol Marks, my co-host, Mr. Speeder, Speedy Petey. Go to our website at www.worldwidesportsradio.com. Check out all our shows throughout the week, including the Sports Loudmouths, which airs every single Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m. Great guests, great content, and a lot of crazy callers and emails I get throughout the week. So thank you to all the fans that just absolutely blast me throughout the social media market. Thank you. Before we get to our guest, we did reach out to John Daigle. He's been very, very busy today. So we're going to have John Daigle on sometime in the next week or two. So shout out to John. We really appreciate you, John. So we understand you're a busy guy. But we have another guy. That was the first episode and first cast of Bracket Wars. We'll get better at it, but it's going to be a long process. 24 teams in our bracket all the way to the end. You can vote. Me and Speedy both picked different teams in the first part of the bracket. So it's up to the fans to see who moves on to through the bracket. Again, we have the 90s Detroit Red Wings, the 2000 Tim Duncan Spurs, the 2010 to 2019 Patriots, and the 2003 to 2009 Red Sox. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our first guest and our only guest of tonight's show, we are now talking to the host of Broadway Hats podcast and Rangers USA hockey writer, Kyle Hall. Kyle, what's up, man?
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, Kyle, you know what's so funny? We get all these different hockey guys on. I forget that you've been on the show a couple of times. So when I did the introduction in the beginning of the show, I forgot that you've been on the show twice. I said this is the first time you've been on the show. So I want to apologize to you. But we're very happy to have you on. There's a lot going on. The NHL playoffs is right around the corner. The Islanders are trying to sneak into the playoffs. The Rangers are in. Before we get into that, how are you and your family doing from COVID and in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, good. We just welcomed baby number 2 in January. So very exciting there. Thank you. It's been very busy. I got my 3-year-old watching Rangers hockey now. He knows his favorite player is Chris Kreider. He yells it at the TV.
Chris Kreider.
He's got a number 10 Panarin jersey, so he's living a good life.
Yeah, well, let's.
You've trained him well.
Yeah.
Maybe you can swing him to the Islanders. Maybe you buy
don't listen to
a
him.
half jersey of the Islanders. That would be nice. I mean, the Islanders have been a little bit more successful than the Rangers in the last couple of years. I mean, come on.
That's debatable.
Oh, come on. 2 back-to-back Eastern Conference championships.
And then nothing last year. Yeah.
All right. And that's why they fired their coach and they bring Lambert in. And hopefully they sneak into the playoffs and create some noise. But we'll see.
Good night for them tonight.
What happened?
Good night for the Isles tonight.
Oh, yeah. It was a good night for the Islanders. And the Rangers I think it was 2-2.
They lost no take. It was a weird game tonight. After last night's game against Tampa, it was like a playoff game. I figured they'd come out flat tonight.
Yeah, well, it looked like Tampa came out flat too, but that's good news for the Islanders as well.
Tampa's trying to purposely get cold so they give the Leafs false hope just for them to lose in the first round again.
Before we get into the NHL season, USA Hockey has been great. The transition of some of these young players. Jack Hughes is becoming a star right in front of our eyes. A lot of people, I spoke to John Van Beesbrook a couple of years ago in the draft. I think it was in Dallas. I think it was in 2018 or 2017. He was telling me about Jack Hughes. He was telling me about some of these young Americans coming up. And now you're seeing the growth of United States hockey. As a matter of fact, everybody was talking about the world power, Canada and Sweden and Russia. I don't think they're the world power anymore. We have seen more United States hockey players being drafted in the first 2 rounds than we have ever seen. So what are your thoughts of USA Hockey and the growth of USA Hockey in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the young players, like you said, Jack Hughes is lighting the league up. I mean, you got Tage Thompson in Buffalo. He's lighting the league up. I mean, all these young players, and you have these old guys like Patrick Kane and Joe Pavelski kind of leaving the scene. And this young talent's coming. You know, Zegras is unbelievable. They need some goaltending, but kind of Hellebuck. But you see these young guys come along, and USA Hockey's in a great place. You look at the Frozen Four going on right now. I mean, most of those kids are American kids. I mean, a lot of the Canadian kids play in the Canadian junior leagues, but most of them are U.S. kids, and it's unbelievable hockey. And you see every year, like you said, there's more and more U.S. kids draft in the first round. The U.S. development program keeps on churning out these young kids that are just superstars. Look at the Rangers got Keandre Miller. He was developed there. Every year you see more and more young kids come out, and it's great. I mean, Connor Bedard obviously is going to be coming out for Canada, and he's going to be kind of the new hottest kid on the block there for Team Canada. But there's a lot of great U.S. talent, like you said, and John Van Beesbrook's done a really good job helping that program turn around there. And you look at a guy, like I said, Tage Thompson, a guy who almost was traded for a 5th-round pick 2 years ago and just slowly developed. And these are the kind of guys that Team USA needs to come on with the future, because guys like Patrick Kane are leaving. You know, guys like the defensive core now has all these young kids. You get the other Hughes brother up there in Vancouver that's been having a great year. So it's great to see that.
So what about for this draft? Any top players for the NHL this draft, and maybe even some sleepers that you think could be good based on what you've watched and covered?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple kids. I mean, if you watch the World Juniors this last couple of years, there's some kids that have come on that you didn't think, like the Rangers have drafted a couple of USA kids in the last couple of years that have the kids, they go to college. So it's almost you forget about them. They come play the World Juniors and stuff. They go to college. You forget about them for a couple of years, and they come in at 23 years old in the NHL and they blow it up. I feel like that's kind of difference with the USA and Canada, where a lot of the Canadian kids come in at like 21, 20 because they have less years of they're once they're drafted, they only have a few years in the OHL and WHL to make an impact before they have to sign. It's only 3 years. Whereas the NCAA, it's 4 years. So it's a lot longer a period. Like a guy like Brett Berard for the Rangers was a 5th-round pick that got taken out of high school. He goes to college, and now he's developed into he played World Juniors, won a gold medal there, and now he's just signed with the Rangers organization 4 years later. So they have so much more time with U.S. prospects where they can grow and develop more, where Canada doesn't really help them that much, and especially with goalies. He gives goalies a couple extra years too, which is super important.
Will Smith, Kyle, I know he's not the rapper. Everybody gives it's not Will Smith, but there's a center going into this year's draft. He's a top 10 draft pick. He's a center. A lot of people think that this kid could be in the top 5 this year. He played very well the last 2 years for USA Juniors. What are your thoughts to Will Smith? He's one of the better puck handlers in this year's draft.
You know, I haven't seen a lot of him, to be honest with you. You watch USHL, like those kind of kids. Like those are the kids I kind of focus on, because that's the U.S. development program plays in the USHL. That's why I watch that a lot more. But I mean, right now, USA probably only has like 2 or 3 kids that are going to be top 15 picks.
Yep.
Most of the kids are going to be a couple of Swedish kids. There's a Russian who, unfortunately, his father just passed away. So there's some question around him. But
Oliver Moore is another guy.
So the top 2 kids could be Fantelli, who's actually playing NCAA, but he's a Canadian, and Connor Bedard, obviously, who's Canadian and ripping it up in the WHL. But the funny thing is that there's a couple Americans now that are actually putting up really big numbers in the OHL. So the Sasha Pasovich, whatever his name is, he's having a huge year, but he doesn't play World Juniors because USA kind of frowns upon kids going to Canada, which stinks because I feel like that's maybe a better competition sometimes than what they get at the college level, depending on where they go to school.
So you mentioned there wasn't as much with the goaltending, and we've seen goaltending be very kind of thin and top heavy in the NHL now. Do you think that is going to be a trend that's going to stay for a while, where you have these more of these goalie platoons, even at the younger levels in, like you're saying, the World Juniors and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think when you look at the U.S. kids that have come out recently, like they've come out strong and then really haven't taken the next step. Like Spencer Knight down in Florida hasn't taken the next step for Florida. Unfortunately, he's out now and doing some personal.
He's
findings.
a nice kid, by the way. I met him in
Yeah.
He's a very nice kid.
Yeah, he was kind of like the next guy they were hanging their hat on, and now Jake Ottinger is really the new kid that they're really hoping that he's been fantastic. Had a great playoff run last year with Dallas. Had a really good year this year, but you look at Cal Peterson, another young kid who they really were depending on, was in the World Juniors, a World Championship team 2 years ago with Ottinger, where I covered that, and he was great in that tournament. He's taken a major step back with LA and has actually been demoted this year and is now completely out of the picture there. And then the young kids coming up through the college ranks are Canadian kids. Devin Levi, who the Rangers just saw against his debut with Buffalo.
Fantastic.
He's a Canadian kid, and he's unbelievable. He looks like he's going to be a really good find. And the Sabres haven't had a goalie since Hasek, so good for them finally getting a goalie, hopefully, there. But you look at the rest of the U.S. goalies, like, Portillo was a kid who I thought had a chance coming out of Michigan. He didn't really – I think he's playing overseas now. He didn't really make any impact. Or he's still at Michigan, but I don't think he's going to make an impact in the NHL level. I thought he was going to be a big guy for them. So, I don't know. There's a couple guys I feel like haven't panned out for a goalie, but that's pretty much the biggest thing because – I feel like every tournament that the U.S. makes a run in, it's the goalie that makes a difference over the Canadian goalie when they match up. So that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest thing for USA going forward. That maybe John Van Beesbrook being a goalie can start developing some more of these kids and bring them along. But that's the only thing.
I already told Johnny that if he needs a scout, he can hire me. I can help him out. I already told him. I grew up. He was my favorite player growing up, and I made a joke with him. I said, "Listen, if you need another scout, you need a guy that can help find the right development of goaltending and kids, I could be the guy. Just hire me. I'll go out there. I'll help you out. I'll do your broadcasting. I'll do the interviewing, and I will get you the right guys to fit USA hockey." So
that is, you like him with the Rangers? Do you like him when he went to Florida?
Okay, so I grew up a Ranger fan.
The truth comes out.
Till I was 12 years old. When they traded him, when they decided to keep the young Mike Richter over him, they traded it to Vancouver, and it just so happens Vancouver couldn't keep Kurt McLean and him. They put him in the expansion draft, and he was the number one pick for the Florida Panthers. Big part of the growth of the Florida Panthers. If it wasn't for Van Beesbrook, maybe the Florida Panthers are an expansion team that never really becomes a pretty good team in the NHL. He was everything to the Florida Panthers in the mid-'90s, but the year of the Rat, especially in '96 when he took them all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. But I was hurt by the way the Rangers treated him. And I know he didn't take it to heart. When I spoke to him, he's always loved the New York Rangers organization, and no hard feelings to him. But let's be honest. The year after they win a Stanley Cup, he was not happy. And then the same team he was traded to the Vancouver Canucks, they put him in the expansion draft. He could have played his ex-team in the Stanley Cup Finals, the Pavel Bure, Kurt McLean, Vancouver Canucks. So I was not very happy with the Rangers, so I became a hater of the Rangers and the organization. Eventually, I just decided, you know what, I'll be an Islander fan, and I became an Islander fan, and I watched bad hockey for a lot of years, but it's changed.
Did he ever end up in the Island?
Yes,
I know he played in New Jersey. I knew he played in New Jersey too.
He's the only goaltender in NHL history to play for all the Metro teams in the NHL. He played for all of them. So he played for the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Devils. He's the only, and he also played for Philadelphia, by the way.
I feel like he's like, for some reason, he doesn't get remembered more for his Ranger. Like, he played most of his career with the Rangers. He was a Vezina Trophy, with the Rangers. Yeah, it's crazy that he doesn't get more Ranger accolades.
He should have won in '96 the Vezina Trophy. He should have won. Okay, but they gave it. I think it was Patrick Waugh that won it that year, if I'm not mistaken. It was either him or Martin Brodeur.
It's him or Brodeur, yeah.
Yeah, but Van Beesbrook was up for the award too. He was up a couple of times for the award, but never won it after that. But listen, Van Beesbrook was a great American goaltender. He was very small, one of the smaller goaltenders. And if you ever met Van Beesbrook, you see how small he is now. It's amazing how great of a goaltender he was in a time where, even though the goaltenders are a lot bigger now and the game is a lot different than it was then. It's amazing when you look at him, you look at Dominic Hasek, and you look at, Belfour, Eddie Belfour, or even Curtis Joseph. These guys were twice the size of him, and he was a great goaltender. So you have to give him credit for that.
So from five out of the 6 years, from 93 to 99, it was Dominic Hasek. And the 1 year, 95-96, that I think you're referring to is the Capitals goalie, Jim Carey.
Jim Carey, yes. Yes, I remember Jim Carey winning it too. And he had that
Great
one.
mask.
He actually had that one good year. So, but nevertheless, it sucks. But Van Beesbroek, I'm surprised they're never going to retire his jersey in New York because he wasn't there long enough and he didn't win anything with the Rangers. But he was a good Ranger. He was a good leader. So
they made the right choice. They made the right choice. Richter worked out pretty well.
I don't know about they made the right choice. He retired
I
early.
will never get to live that down.
Listen, first of all, he was a Badger, and I hate the Wisconsin Badgers. Okay, I never like Wisconsin basketball, hockey, football. I hate them. Everybody asks me why I hate them. I just can't stand them as a college. But nevertheless, Mike Richter was a good goaltender. He really was. And even when he won the World Cup for the when he won the World Cup for the United States Hockey, Van Beesbroek was the backup. I wasn't happy about that either. So it was nothing.
MVP of the tournament, let like 3 goals the entire tournament.
Yeah, it didn't make me any happier. Okay, so just say that. But nevertheless, 2 goaltenders that I learned to respect. I interviewed both of them. I like Mike. Mike is a very nice guy, good Samaritan to the game of hockey. He really is, and he stands very high to a lot of Ranger fans. So I respect him. So I can't hate on Mike Richter. Just the fact that he was a Badger. That's it.
So I wanted to ask you about the NHL trade deadline. I remember I was seeing on your Twitter that you said you actually called the Patrick Kane trade, like the time it was going to happen and like how much rumblings the Rangers were going to have. And also Vladimir Tarasenko getting traded like he did. What did you think of those moves for the Rangers, the value they got back?
I mean, I love it. I mean, the Tarasenko trade, like we all thought that was the Kane put to bed, right? Like that was a trade that they made.
Everybody was going to happen. They were going to get Kane no matter what.
And then all of a sudden, like it was a joke, like that one guy in the Rangers accounting room was like, "Oh, hey, we have like $17 left. Like we can turn this into Patrick Kane somehow." And they did. And I mean, you look at what they gave up. I mean, they gave up Sammy Blais. I mean, he's a 4th line player. I know he's having a good year with St. Louis. He kind of got out of New York and started lighting it up there. But they gave up nothing. They cut,
gave up a 1st-round draft pick. They did.
Yeah, the 1st-round pick. But I mean, to get to that was a playoff. If they get to the playoffs with a 1st-round pick, that's fair. Kane, if they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, turns to a 1st-round pick. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fair. For what they gave up for the level of player they're getting from these guys and the level of player that that can produce in the playoffs, I think it's huge. And I think the actual addition of Mikola in the trade with Tarasenko is almost even more important because of the Ryan Lindgren injury. He stepped up tremendously, and he's a guy who now. I think coming into a trade, you're kind of questioning, like, okay, what can he do? There's some bad scouting reports out of St. Louis and some of the stuff that he was doing there, but he has been a welcome surprise to Rangers lineup and has really solidified not only Lindgren out, but I think he solidified the 3rd pairing there, where Ben Harper, a guy who's a really career 7th defenseman who has been playing a lot this year, has played okay, but he's not a guy you really want to depend on the playoffs. And now we have a guy with Mikola who's got playoff experience, has played really well coming into the playoffs. It gives me a lot more confidence, at least going into the playoffs, that he can get it done.
We are talking to the host of Broadway Hat podcast and Rangers and USA hockey writer, Kyle Hall. Kyle, you look at the Eastern Conference, Carolina. Everybody looks at Carolina being that they've played 78 games. They have 50 wins and 19 losses. You look at that record. That's a fantastic record. But they're not as good as they were last year. A lot of people look at the roster. This is no gimme for them going. A lot of people last year thought they were the favorites of going to the Stanley Cup and winning the Stanley Cup. This year, they're not the favorites. As a matter of fact, Boston is the favorite. A lot of people think Toronto's better than Carolina. Some even people think that New Jersey's way better than Carolina is, especially with the move for Timo Meier at the trade deadline. So what is it with Carolina? Why is Carolina still lurking as the number 1 seed right now in the Metropolitan Division?
Well, they're just kind of holding on, right? I feel like New Jersey kind of gave them a little leeway. They went when the Devils only 5-5 over 10 games back in March. They kind of fell off a little bit after the Meier trade, which is funny because you'd think they'd pick up speed, but it takes guys a while to get in. He was also a little banged up. But I hate to say this, but after the Rangers beat Carolina last year in the playoffs, you beat a team like you can beat them, right? Like it's not like if I saw Tampa in the playoffs, I'd be a lot more nervous than if I saw Carolina because I know that's a team the Rangers can beat. personally, I think the Rangers match up better with Carolina than they would with New Jersey because of the speed factor. But I think it's Boston's game right now. I think Boston's the team to beat in the East. I think when you look at the goaltending, you got to look at the playoffs. I feel like a goalie can steal a series. Carolina doesn't have that goalie. I feel like they can steal a series. New Jersey, I think their speed can steal a series, but I don't think it's the goaltending. Your Islanders, if they get in, Sorokin can steal a series. Igor can steal a series. Olmark can steal a series. I don't see that in Toronto. I don't see it in Toronto. I see it in Tampa. Vasilevsky can steal a series. So I always feel like I go with the goalies that can steal a series when it's more of an even series. But Carolina, they're a really good team. They're a really deep team, but I think they lost Trocheck to the Rangers, and he was such a big force in that team, not only offensively, but just in the faceoff circle, which has had a huge impact on the Rangers over 55% this year. And I feel like last year, one of the reasons why Carolina was winning so much was they had constant possession in their offensive zone, and it's because he was winning faceoffs, and they had that's a void now this year. So they're a great team. They're an unbelievable coach team. Rob Brind'Amour is probably, arguably, other John Cooper, probably the best coach in the NHL right now.
And the worst nose in the NHL too.
Oh, the worst nose, the worst voice, like the worst, like his face on the bench after there's a call. I hate it. Like his little white hair sticking out of his head.
You know what's so funny? I actually went to the draft in Dallas, and we were staying in the same hotel as the Carolina Hurricanes. And me and two other guys, we were sitting, we were in the elevator, we were going in the elevator, and Rob Brind'Amour standing right behind us. At the time, he took over the team in the middle of the season as the head coach, and he's standing right behind us. And somebody tells me, one of the guys tell me, "Hey, it's Brendan Shanahan." I look back, I was like, "That's not Brendan Shanahan. That's Rob Brind'Amour." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's who he was. It's Rob Brind'Amour." He looked at him. He gave him one of the ugliest looks. I'll never forget it.
I hate Shanahan.
And Brendan Shanahan was there, but he was working for Toronto as an assistant GM. But it was so funny when he said it, and Rob looked at him. And Rob's a lot bigger than he looks. But he has one of the worst noses. I tell you, have all this money, get a nose job or something. Get that nose fixed.
It's like a battle scar, right?
It's horrible.
Guys with their teeth, they get their teeth fixed, and then after it pops up for the second time, they're like, "Oh, whatever, we're done."
Man, I don't care. Listen, I'd rather him have no teeth. Fix your damn nose. It's disgusting.
It's funny because my mother actually says the same thing about Daryl Sutter. She thought he has the ugliest nose. She calls him Birdman as a result because
Rob Brind'Amour has the worst nose in the NHL.
I brought it up to Errol last year. He still thought it was Rob Brind'Amour. Obviously, I was rooting for the Rangers, but I also thought it would have been funny if the Flames and the Hurricanes played in the Stanley Cup final. So it would have been battle of the ugly noses.
Dude, his nose is bent in like 6 different ways. Okay,
it's a roller coaster ride.
It is. It's like it looks like an avalanche.
So I wanted to ask you about the face-offs, because you were saying how Trocheck definitely improved it, but the rest of the face-off team's still not amazing. Mika Zibanejad has been better in recent weeks in the second half of the season, but again, a lot of them are still under 50%. Is that a concern for you going into the playoffs?
100%, yeah. It's a concern. It's huge in the playoffs because, like I said, it's possession, and everything's possession in the playoffs. Trocheck, they needed it so badly. Ryan Strome was 44% in the face-off circle. As good as he was offensively at times, his faceoffs were abysmal. And the guy, I don't think ever won an offensive zone faceoff. So, having Trocheck's huge, Zibanejad started the year off really well. He was over 50% for a while, then he dropped off. Heedle's kind of the guy that really has struggled this year, and it's been a struggle from his entire career to the point where I talked with his coach down in Hartford when he was down there, and they were contemplating moving him to wing. And because of his speed and his ability to help out in the defensive zone, they kept him at center. It worked out well. The guy's got a huge contract extension, but I think he's almost under 40% now. It's crazy how much he struggled. Barclay Goodrow's been strong. Tyler Mott can take faceoffs. So they have two, I would say Goodrow and Goodrow is a guy who he can win faceoffs. Like on the penalty kill, I can depend on him to win a faceoff. Trocheck's really the guy, and he's going to be a guy when third period comes around and they need a face-off, they have two centermen on the ice. They have Zibanejad out there and Trocheck out there, and Trocheck's going to take every freaking face-off that it counts in the last 10 minutes. I guarantee that. Last year, they kind of did it with Kopp when he was on the team. He came in, took the bigger face-offs at the end. Even though he was playing wing, he started taking face-offs because Ryan Strome couldn't win a face-off. So I think Gallant knows that. I think he's going to go back to Trocheck again a lot. But yeah, it's a huge concern. That's a concern. The Rangers were losing in the Tampa series last year, like 30. They were losing like 70-30 on faceoffs, and they're wondering like why their possession numbers were way down after game 2. And it's because they couldn't win a faceoff ever. And the offensive zone in the playoffs, it's so important to keep pressure on the defense, keep guys on the ice for more, and that's when mistakes happen. And when you lose offensive zone faceoffs and guys can get off the ice and change, you lose that you lose that advantage.
We are talking to the host of the Broadway Hat podcast and Rangers and USA hockey writer Kyle Hall. Kyle, the Eastern Conference is so wide open, and honestly, the Eastern Conference is so much better than the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that whoever comes out of the East is winning the whole thing. Now, I thought last year Colorado doing what they did, and they've played better hockey, much better hockey in the second half from what they did in the first half. And now they're at 98 points, and they're tied with Minnesota. Minnesota's had a great year. But in the East, the team to beat right now is the Boston Bruins. I mean, some of the acquisitions that they made at the trade deadline was fantastic. They lost Taylor Hall for the season, but maybe not now. He might be back in the playoffs. Who knows? But this Boston Bruin team, they have the best goalie in the league. They have one of the best. They have the best first line in the league. They have one of the best defensive pairings in the league. What is the weakness of this team? Do they have a weakness?
I don't think they do, but isn't it crazy how all these guys come back for the playoffs that are injured? Like, isn't that crazy? You can circumvent this cap like that. But talk about Colorado. Colorado's been so hurt this year. They're finally getting healthy, and that's a team that I think is going to be exactly where you think they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be in the Western Conference final and whatever. I think the Western Conference right now, the question mark is, can McDavid finally make a run? And I think his legacy is going to be never winning a cup, which is crazy for how good he is. But does Boston have a weakness? I don't think so. I mean, if you look at that team, like the first line is ridiculous. The second line is very good. And then they picked up all these guys at the deadline that are solid third and fourth liners that really fill out that entire lineup. Their defensive core is, when you look at after McAvoy, you're like, oh, who's on this D core? And you're like, all right, that's a couple names I know, but nothing really jumps at you, and they're a fantastic group. Like, they give up nothing. They shut you down. They get an early lead. They're like the 95 Devils. They just shut you down to the neutral zone. They let up nothing. And Olmark has had an incredible season. Both goalies have been great for them, but Olmark's been great. And the tough thing, the only thing that you can really get on them is if they can take some stupid penalties at times. And if you can, if you're looking at it from a Rangers standpoint, if the Rangers can get a power play going like they did last year in the playoffs, like that could be one advantage on them. But I think you have to hope that the team basically plays a couple 7-game series and wears out on you, and that's when you play them. But
here's a great number for you, Kyle. Here's this. Differential plus 121.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a team end the season with a differential over 100?
It's high. It's a high number.
It's a really high number.
It's a high number.
That's a really,
number.
really high number. That's
a high number. I think I saw the other day how many one-goal game, just allowed like one goal a game, whatever it was, and it was like they led the league by far. I was like, that's crazy. But yeah, I think they're in the most popular, like minus 1.2, like 1.5 bet this year, 2 in Vegas, and people just cleaning up on them because they're winning by 2 goals every game, which helps when you have a 120 goal differential. But yeah, it's crazy that they changed the coach, and this is like the new system that came in can just change it that quickly. And Jim Montgomery's done a great job up there. And yeah, you get past the top line, and all of a sudden Pasternak comes at you. Like, what are you gonna do? Like they come in waves at you. And talk about face-off guys. Bergeron doesn't lose a face-off, especially in the playoffs. That guy is an animal. So, they're a fantastic group. I'm very happy that the Rangers don't have to see them until the Eastern Conference Final, hopefully.
No, the Islanders might have to see them in the first round.
But hey, like I said, Sorokin is a guy who can steal a series for you. And those are games that are going to be 2-1, 3-2. And the Islanders have the fourth line that can mash with that fourth line on the other side. So that's the Islanders' saving grace. They have that fourth line from your last 2 Eastern Conference Finals that you want to bring up every time I talk to you. That's the line that drove you guys there. That's the line that gets you there. Clutterbuck somehow scores like 10 goals every playoffs because he becomes, Connor McDavid in the playoffs, and he just crushes guys from behind and scores goals.
So does Beauvillier, but they traded him. So will they get the same production from the fourth line?
They have Bo Horvat, and now that you have if Barzal actually comes back and you put him on that line, before Barzal got hurt, he had in I think it was his 6 or 7 games, he had 8 points or something like that. He was playing good hockey before he got hurt, and then all of a sudden this injury, this upper body injury, and he's out for 2 months, and nobody is saying what was wrong with him. And he's been out for practically the whole second half of the season. It's been horrible. And if the Islanders don't make the playoffs, that's the reason why they don't make the playoffs.
And they've been teasing his return. He's like, oh, they're skating today. Then he doesn't skate. It's very weird.
Yeah. NHL injury reports in general are just very weird. So I just want to ask you, because you said the Bruins have no weaknesses. Is it the Rangers that have the best chance of knocking them off, or do you think it's another team?
Oh, man. I hope so.
I do too, but realistically,
to be honest with you, probably their weakness would be speed, which would be the Devils, which would be them beating the Rangers in the first round, which I don't want to see happen. But I think maybe speed might be the one that can actually get by them. They have a couple older guys, but I don't know. I think that team is. You look at teams that are just built, and that team is just built. Like you look at that roster, and like Orlov, like they really needed him, like that. They added him, and he's been unbelievable for them. So. Yeah, they're tough. I think speed could beat them, but they run into a goalie that gets hot. Who knows? But I would love to see them match up with Toronto in the second round.
Toronto's not getting out of the first round. I'm so tired of listening. I see Jeff, the best team that has the best chance to knock off Boston is Toronto. Toronto hasn't gotten out of the first round since the 90s. Okay? Give me a break. They can add as many players as they want. It doesn't matter who they matched up in the first round against.
The Lightning.
Oh, they're losing. They're losing against the Lightning. They're not.
Vasilevsky wins that series.
They're not beating the Lightning. That'll be another series, another disappointing year for the great and powerful Toronto Maple Leafs. Thank you, John Tavares, because you are a jinx. So now that you're off my team will progressively move forward, and you will move back.
Hey, John Tavares' defense, they were losing first-round playoff series before he came, too, though.
I don't know. He makes him even worse. So there you go.
He was hurt. He was hurt last year, though, so you can't really blame him for that.
God, I want to throw
But then
up.
they said they still scored 0 goals.
I want to throw up.
Just as many as the Lightning did in the round before against the Capitals in the 2018.
As everybody knows, we are talking to the host of Broadway Hats podcast and Rangers and USA hockey writer Kyle Hall. Kyle, the Devils. The Devils have been fantastic all season long. Everybody thought they were going to fall apart in the second half. They had Timo Meier. Hamilton has been unbelievable. I mean, he has the most goals out of any Devil defenseman in history. I think he has like 19 or 20 goals. I mean, he's been unbelievable. He was worth every single penny that they paid him. There's other defensemen that they've brought in over the years that weren't worth any of the pennies that they gave him, but we're not going to get into the names that we could bring up. But the last offensive defenseman I remember on the Devils were this good was Scott Niedermayer.
Yeah.
And Hamilton's been fantastic. They're a young team. They have a very good farm system, and they're going to grow. And Lindy Ruff, say whatever you want. I was never a big Lindy Ruff fan, but he was part of those Panther years with Doug McClain and all that other stuff. But he has been everything the Devils needed him to be as a head coach. So what do you think of Lindy Ruff this year? Is he coach of the year for what the Devils have done? And are the Devils the team to beat right now in the Metropolitan Division?
I think if Jim Montgomery didn't have 120-something points, whatever it is, he'd win it. But, yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, all these young kids, and you got this old coach, Lindy Ruff, who's like not known as a player's guy. Like, he's not known as a young coddling coach. So it's kind of funny to see like he's the guy that kind of put it all together for them. But the Devils, talk about Hamilton, like how many swings and misses have they had in spring and free agency? Finally, they hit on one.
Did they ever?
Yeah, and I mean, they're finally getting goaltending this year. Vanchek's been – I mean, last year they had this team that they would score 5 goals a game and lose because they didn't have any goalie. So, I mean, I think Vanchek has almost been their MVP this year, even with Hughes. I mean, Hughes is their MVP. But, I mean, Vanchek's been such a huge part of that team. And they're so fast. Like I said, they're fast. Like you watch them against Rangers, they are so fast.
They kick the Rangers' ass. The Rangers do not want to play them. They do not want to play them.
Yeah, so the Rangers came out flat 2 weeks ago when there was kind of the battle for second place there, and the Devils just – I mean, they outskated them. They've done it twice this year. I mean, two of the games have done OT. The Devils have won 2 other games. So, I mean, the Rangers have not had good matchups with them this year. But, again, they didn't have good matchups with Carolina either. going into the playoffs last year, and then they were able to beat them. But playoff hockey is a different animal. We'll see how these kids react. It's gonna be their first time. I kind of compared them to last year's Rangers team that had zero experience really for most of the guys on the
They have
team.
nothing to lose. That's why I think
That's
they're
what I'm saying.
dangerous.
That like they're gonna go in there and get some playoff experience. But I mean, you guys got like Dawson Mercer, who was a late first round pick, like turning into a stud. I mean, guys that you wouldn't really think. I mean, their defense, like other than Hamilton, like what other guy on the team would you really look at? Like, oh, this guy's good. But like Sears, these guys have been great. Like they've been really good, and they've really come into their own. Like guys like Brendan Smith, who has been cast off by the Rangers, cast off by Carolina, has come in and like filled in this leadership role for them that they needed. So they're getting it all over the place. But I mean, Jack Hughes can take over a game. And I was at the Ranger draft party when the Rangers got Kako, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's gonna."
I was there at the draft when they drafted Kako.
Yeah, so I'm like, he's more NHL ready, and he's a bigger guy, and Hughes is 165 pounds, soaking wet, and everything else. And
Did you ever have you ever seen Hughes' legs?
Yeah, I know. You see all these kids' legs.
His
They're
legs,
Cole
they're
Caulfield's
huge, man. They're huge. He's not a big guy, but when you look at his waist to his knees, I mean, the guy is built. His legs are built like an ox.
Yeah,
So,
and his skating ability is just next level. His stick handling, his skating ability, he can skate through. I mean, you watch these Connor Bedard highlights, and he's just going through these 16-year-old kids, and it's like, that's unfair.
He's a younger
Hughes is
Parisi.
doing that. Hughes is doing that in the NHL.
Yeah, he's a younger Parisi. That's what I think he is. His game, the way he plays, he's better than Parisi was. But Zach Parisi, when he was drafted by the Devils, everybody was looking at him as fast, talented, good leader. He could do everything, put the puck in the net, and that's the type of player Jack Hughes has turned out to be.
And I think the one guy on the team who he's stayed relatively healthy the entire season, he hasn't been able to do that recently, is Nico Hischier, and he's had an unbelievable season. Talk about a guy who can win you a big faceoff, and that guy is a monster in the faceoff circle, kills penalties, is a great leader. I actually talked with him a couple weeks ago, and I was joking around with him, like, so what do you think about a Ranger Devil playoff series? He's like, I would love it. He's like, that'd be so good for the area. He's like, fans will love it, blah, blah, blah. And so he was really excited about it, and I was like, yeah, let's see how that goes. But no, I think he's been fantastic, and he is a second. Well, I guess between the two of them, the two centers, I mean, it's a great 1-2 duo. It's tough again. Like, what line do you send your shutdown line on? You try to shut down one of those guys, one of those lines, and the other ones could get you. So they're a really good team. They're super young. They're going to be around for a while. I think last year I said that they're the team to watch, and they kind of fell apart because of their goaltending, because I saw that you watch them enough. I watched them enough in preseason a couple years ago. I'm like, this team is so fast. And now all these kids are 1 year older, 1 year more developed, and they're taking it to the NHL right now.
And the goaltending that they had, one of which ended up being a third string on the Rangers, the other ended up being a third string on the Islanders at certain points. Corey Schneider and Keith Kincaid.
Yeah, two legends.
Two absolute legends. So I wanted to ask about
Keith is a nice kid. He's from Long Island.
He's a Long Island kid, yeah.
Very nice kid. Very, very nice kid. I met him a couple of times. He was at David Buster's, and he wears these ugly hats still. But nice kid. Very, very
Maybe
nice
you can
kid.
give him one of your hats. You have all these hats that you want to give
I do. I'm a hat guy. So, but he likes wearing these these cowboy hats. Like he wears like these weird what they call them, Billy the Kid kind of hats. They like the weird. Just like what's his name again, Henrik Lundqvist.
Yes,
he wears these ugly hats too. Him and Kincaid. What is it, like a goalie thing? They like to wear these ugly hats. Well, it's horrible.
Hank wears the fedora. He's Swedish. Right. Kid from Farmingdale shouldn't be doing that.
Well, I think he wears fedoras too. My friend Justin used to wear fedoras. But when I first met him, he's from New Jersey, moved here to New York, and he was wearing fedoras out. And I was like, dude, do not wear a fedora out in New York. They will kick your ass. That's what I told him. He's like, what's wrong? This is hot. I was like, hot when and where? If you're in Missouri or in Louisiana, they're hot. Over here in New York, you would be, they kick you in the ass, okay? You cannot wear a fedora out.
They're big at Bar A, trust me.
Oh, my God, it's horrible. Horrible.
So I want to ask about, we were talking about the kids. I was talking about the Rangers kids. Philip Hedl just got a new contract. And we've also seen, since they've gotten Kane and Tarasenko, them experiment with the kids on the power play. So what have you thought? What are your thoughts on those processes that they've done, trying to incorporate them more into the top six?
Yeah, I think they're trying. I mean, when you have all this veteran talent, I mean, it's tough to put them over Tarasenko or Kane on a power play unit or even on a line. I mean, they're getting better. I mean, Heedle's got 22 goals this year. I mean, it's obviously they all have career highs this year. Every kid's got a career high. Kako, I feel like he's been lighting up lately. Actually, he's been ridden red hot. He's got 5 points in the last 6 games. He's got 4 goals. His shot is really good. Kako's shot's really good. It's finally really developed. This last offseason, he got clocked at 109 on a slap shot. So the kid's got a cannon of a shot. He just doesn't shoot. He wants to pass. So he's been shooting more this year. Lafreniere struggled for probably 2 months of the season, but he's really turned it on and played really well. The kids have been playing really well lately. And it's funny, when they got Kane, all of them separately in interviews were like, oh yeah, my idol growing up was Patrick Kane. So all of a sudden you bring your idol into the locker room. And I've had a lot of guys on my show that idolize Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier as kids, and they end up playing with them in the Rangers like later on in their career. So it's kind of funny. And they always said, like, they felt like they got an extra boost because they were playing with Wayne Gretzky. And I feel, and I'm not comparing Patrick Kane to Wayne Gretzky, but when you play with your idol, I feel like you want to kind of impress him as well as learn from him as well. And I think that they've stepped up tremendously. And they had a huge playoffs last year, right? That's kind of put them on the map, like out of New York. Like the kid line became a thing. So they're getting hot now, I think. Heedle signed his contract, which was a huge win for the Rangers. They got him on a good deal, $4.3 million for 4 years. I thought that was fair. They got to re-sign Lafreniere. They got to re-sign Keandre Miller. Those are the 2 guys.
I don't think you should sign Lafreniere. I think you need to trade him. I understand what you're saying, and I understand he's 21 years old, but everybody expected this guy was the number 1 pick. Okay? He was the number 1 pick. This year, he has 16 goals and 23 assists. He's played better in the second half. 39 points for a kid that was a number 1 pick in the draft, and he's been playing a lot, significantly a lot, and he's getting a lot of time on the ice. The fact that he is not producing, that worries me as a team and as an owner, or even as a GM with Chris Drury. I would be not very happy with him. Even Capo Kako. Kako should be better than he was. I remember when in the World Championships, Junior Championships, this guy was the best player on the ice. He was dominating. Everybody was talking about, oh my God, he's better. He's going to be better than Jack Hughes. He's not even close in the same hemisphere as a guy like Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes is developed. It takes 2 to 3 years. There's no excuses with Capo Kako. And Alexis Lafreniere, what is this, his 3rd year? If he's not producing, and that's where I'm not giving him a contract. Either I would extend him 1 year. If he can't produce next year, I'm trading him.
I think he's gonna get a deal similar to what Kako got, where it was a bridge deal for 2 years, kind of a deal, like a show me deal. I don't think you give up on him this soon, because I don't know what value you get from him in the open market. And if he does turn out to be a 35 to 30 goal scorer the year he leaves, I mean, Chris Drury won't be able to live that down with the fan base. But
Kyle, there are a lot of players that just don't work out in certain places. And being in New York, as we all know, it's not easy to play here. It hasn't been. If it was, the Rangers would have won more Stanley Cups. If it was, the Islanders would be winning. It's not easy to play here. There's a lot of pressure on you to win. So
I think the difference with Lafreniere, though, is if he was in Columbus, he's playing the top line, he's getting power play time. It's a tough situation for a kid to come into not a veteran team, but a team that has had 2 top lines developed.
What are they?
But he had a chance.
5 young team. They're a top. What I think the Rangers are the 5th youngest team in the NHL right now.
Yeah, but you look at the top 6. The top 6 is not young.
Yeah.
The rest of the team is young. The defense core is young, other than Trouba. I mean, but you're not going to kick Chris Kreider. You're not kicking Chris Kreider out of a top line. You know what I mean? You're not kicking the guys in front of him right now are Kreider and Panarin. That's out of his position. That's tough for him to jump any guy to get up there. So, and he couldn't switch to the right side. They tried to
jump it, baby. Go out.
They tried to move him. They tried to move to the right side. It worked out for like 2 weeks, and then he kind of got discombobulated in the defensive end. So they moved him back to the left side. That was a whole experiment last year.
Kyle.
Now, Kako, on the other hand, has had the opportunities.
Kyle, I love you, and I know you're a Ranger fan, but you watch. Connor Bedard is going to be the number 1 pick this year, and Connor Bedard will score 30 goals next year.
But Connor Bedard's going to play on the Blackhawks, which have no one else. He is going to be top line. He's going to play 25 minutes a game.
Stop.
I'm telling you, it's
He's
situation.
the number 1 pick. You have the back-to-back years. You had the number 1 and number 2 pick, and both of those guys aren't developing. That to me is alarming. Your development of players have not worked. Yeah, you're bringing in these veteran players like Panarin. Zabitijad, you're making trades. Fantastic. Great moves. You bring in Adam Fox. That was a great move. I think it was when John Davidson was taking off. I think he was just moving in as the president of the organization when they brought in Adam Fox. Great moves, but they're not your guys. You didn't draft them.
Tell me Keandre Miller. Miller.
Oh, hold on. Let's get into Keandre Miller before we let you go, okay? This guy, okay, all right, he shows some bright sides of talent where you could say, oh, my God, this guy is very talented. Big, strong, can skate, everything. And then there are games that you stand out and you itch your head. I'm like, where the hell is this guy? What is he? Is he actually a good player? Is he actually going to show up every single game? You cannot do that in the playoffs. If you play that way in the playoffs, you're not going to succeed. And by the way, stop it. I mean, stop saying that you didn't mean to spit at what's his name again. Okay. Okay. That was embarrassing. And the fact is I understand he apologized, but it wasn't a good enough apology. He's saying, well, I didn't mean to do that. What do you mean you didn't mean to do it? It looked pretty much that you wanted to do that. If your helmet was off, you probably would have bit his nose off. Okay. Don't lie to us that you weren't trying to spit at him. It looked like you were trying to. So it's I know you like Keandre Miller. A lot of Ranger fans like Keandre Miller. The Rangers have not drafted very well. They really haven't. And tell me, out of all these draft picks that they had over the years, tell me one of them that has turned into a development player that you really love. Please give me one.
Igor.
That's it. The goaltender. And they always find the goaltenders. They always do. Henrik Lundqvist, they got him in the 4th, 5th round. He turns out to be one of the best goalies. Igor.
First off, you go back to the team that was in the Stanley Cup back in 2013, 2012. That team had developed players. Ryan Callahan. They had Dubinsky. They were developing guys.
And they traded them all away, and they let them go.
Well, they had to. We had to rebuild.
Why?
We had to rebuild. Because we bought Marty St. Louis. Marty St. Louis.
Hold on. Callahan was
contract.
27 years old when they let him go.
They couldn't afford him. He needed a new contract.
And where did he go? He go to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that state tax off.
Oh, okay.
He made it out.
It seems like everybody that leaves the Rangers go to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Or Carolina.
Oh,
They said south. They were as typical New Yorkers. They retire south.
Well, I will say this. The Rangers these guys need to start developing, because I hear from everybody, oh, the Rangers farm system, this guy, that guy. Oh, they got another offensive player. Who's the winging guy? The Hoffman. Oh, my God. This guy's going to be fantastic. He's going to come into the NHL and be a 4th-line player. These guys need to develop, and that's the problem right now for the New York Rangers. They're not developing.
That's the one I'm looking to trade for, potentially a good center at that point. Not Lafreniere. I'll keep Lafreniere.
Why? You're going to trade away a guy that everybody says is probably the best prospect they've had in a very long time in their farm system, and you're going to trade it. You're going to keep Lafreniere.
Where were the Rangers last time had a good center? Like, we actually would face off.
Lafreniere is so overrated. I told Ranger fans. I remember the Ranger fans telling me. I told the Ranger fans, I said, the Rangers should trade that first pick, get a defenseman, and get another pick, get an extra 1st-round draft pick, and get a defenseman, a top-line defender. They drafted Lafreniere, and to me, Lafreniere has been an absolute bust. Absolute bust.
The guy that you can go back on was, and I shake my head every time I look at it, is the Kravtsov selection.
Oh, yeah.
Which was...
I was there for that draft, too.
Well, yeah, Kravtsov was the guy who I didn't want. I wanted a guy named Zegras, who turned out to be pretty solid, taken 2 picks later by Anaheim.
A lot of Ranger fans wanted Oliver Wahlstrom, too.
Yep. I liked him, too. But Zegras was a kid who grew up in the New York area, played for the Junior Rangers, had ties to it, huge Ranger fan growing up, was a perfect fit, and they go with the Russian kid. And now he's in Vancouver getting yelled at by Rick Tocchet saying he's not strong enough.
I love Rick, man.
It'll be the ex-New York wing line if he ever develops. He can play with Beauvillier.
I'll never forget. I was growing up. I was a really good hockey player, and I went to a camp, and Rick Tocchet was one of the coaches there. And I'll never forget. We were playing 4-on-4 hockey, and a guy was coming trying to go inside on me, and I put my stick out, and I stuck my stick, and I yanked him, and he went one way, and his body went the other. And Rick called called the practice, and he pulled me to the side. He's screaming at me, telling me that I did it wrong.
Maybe once Rick Tocchet doesn't work out in Vancouver, they could bring back John Tortorella once the Flyers fire him, and then it'll be a Vitaly Kravtsov.
Who yells at somebody doing that?
It'll be Vitaly Kravtsov and John Tortorella, X2X Rangers reunited with JT Miller.
Oh man, Rick Tocchet, funny guy. Anyways, Kyle, thank you for joining us as always. We'll get you on soon. Maybe during the playoffs, if the Rangers get out of the first round, let's get you on. We'll get a couple of Ranger guys. Let's bring the Rangers.
Oh, you want to bring your guy back on?
What's his name again?
Anthony Scultore.
Yeah, let's get him on the show.
You want to go into great debate? You can listen to Errol and Anthony Scultore go at it with each other.
What it is Anthony is such an Islander hater. I love him. His stories, everything that he does for the Rangers and the Ranger fans, fantastic writer. He really is. But for some reason, he has this hatred for the Islanders. And every year, it doesn't matter how good the Islanders are or what they have of this. Oh, they're not even making the playoffs. They stink. This team's better. He a couple of years ago when the Islanders went to the Eastern Conference Championship, he had Philadelphia,
winning the division at the
start of the season. I almost spit out the water that was in my mouth. Okay, he is out of his mind. But nevertheless, I love him, and I would love to get him on and you on, two Ranger guys, and just go at it with both of you. That would be fun.
We'll do that once they get out of the first round. We'll do that.
Maybe we'll sneak in an Islander guy so he can help me out. I don't want to be the cream of your Oreo, okay? Anyways, Kyle, keep up the good work as always. Your stories. Congratulations on your second kid, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
Thanks, guys. Be good.
Kyle Hall, fantastic, man. I love it. It's so funny when you get Ranger guys on the show. I like to have fun with them because they don't. As an Islander guy, they don't like me.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. And by the way, it's so funny how Jeff attacks me on every single thing I say, and I go back and then he says I made a bet when I didn't make a bet. He's like, he sends me his Venmo like I bet him $1,000. I never bet him $1,000. Never bet him $1,000. He claims I bet him $1,000. It's so funny, but there is one bet that if it does come to fruition, you're going to be doing, okay? Because everybody heard you doing it, and you did make the bet. You saying that I made a bet for $1,000. I'm not sending you $1,000 when I never made a bet with you for $1,000. So
here he is now.
Good. Come on.
Good. Jeff, I do want to say as well while I bring you in. Jeff, I do want to say this as I bring you in now. That was enough Bruins content for a Rangers guest as well, for number one. And number two, Keandre Miller served his suspension and he's played great since he's come back.
Doesn't not make him a serial scumbag. Should he be spitting on people?
I'm not saying he shouldn't. He served his suspension. Let's hope he's not a repeat offender.
Oh, well, that's great then. I can never hear anything about Brad Marchand ever again because he served his suspension and he's been great ever since. So you guys can stop it with Brad Marchand too.
I never bring up Brad Marchand. First of all,
no, because that's the first thing everyone brings up about a Bruins fan. They're like, "Oh, you think someone's a scumbag?" Well, Brad Marchand. Oh, sorry, friend. He served his suspension. He's been great since.
I never say it. As a matter of fact, I became a Marchand fan when I first got a chance to see him live and in color. So I never.
Yeah, that little soil sniffer. You gotta love him.
Yeah, he's a soil sniffer, all right. Anyways, what would you like to talk about, Jeff?
Have we gotten a wellness check on Carl?
Oh, did Quinnipiac win, Jeff? I was hoping that was the case because my brother graduated from there.
5-2.
Nice, very nice.
5-2. So that was Michigan's version of the national championship game because they can never make a national championship game. The semifinals, as far as so, I guess they're technically Michigan's runner-ups.
Congratulations to Quinnipiac, by the way. Maybe they win the national championship, and then you have two Connecticut teams winning the basketball and hockey national championships. That's good.
I don't know, man. Did you see Minnesota against BU?
No, we haven't watched any of the games tonight.
Minnesota was pretty tough.
Well, they scored how many? I know they were up. I think 5-2 at one point. What was the final with that?
Yes, 6-2.
6-2. Okay. Yeah.
I think two of them were empty netters though. The fifth one was an empty netter and made the goalie up. But yeah, it was. But it wasn't even that. Minnesota hit 8 posts and then also missed 4 open nets. And
Really?
then they also probably scored another goal, but because there wasn't a good camera angle, they ruled it no goal. But I think the puck made it over.
So basically, they should have scored 10 goals tonight, is what you're saying.
It wasn't like the score isn't even indicative of how that game was played. Trust me.
All right. Well, 2 blowouts. Then it could be ideal letdown spot coming, or it could be just a team of destiny type thing, like we saw with the UConn basketball team.
And I'm, surprised at you, Speedy. That it seems like you should have asked that question about serial scumbag Keandre Miller.
No,
Seems
I was
like a
not.
relevant
I
thing.
was not calling that wording, Jeff. You just
that's what upset you, scumbag. That's the bad word now. Holy crap, we're getting soft.
I was not using that as a Rangers guy that we've had on our show twice. And
You're
again,
not calling the guest a serial scumbag. You're calling Keandre Miller a serial scumbag. Which, by the way,
I'm not
he
using.
is.
I'm not using serial in that instance.
It just means repetitive.
Repetitive. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
That's not a bad word either. Why don't you look up serial?
We're not saying it's a bad word, Jeff. I'm not going to use it in that context.
I like cereal.
We know. Again, I wasn't going to use it in that context, and we had plenty of other Bruins content with a Rangers guest on. So
yes, we did.
I mean, quite frankly, it should just all be Bruins content because there's nothing else to talk about. The Bruins are now 1 win away from tying the NHL record and 2 away from breaking it. And you're wasting your time on Alex Lafreniere? Seems ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You got a goalie that's going to win the Triple Crown, barely even mentioned all year, right? You got a coach that in his first year with a team that was basically exactly the same as it was last year, and they were disappointing last year, is leading them to one of the most incredible seasons in NHL history. Barely talked about. That's okay. Your New York bias is showing.
why? Because we have a Rangers guest on now.
I actually gave Boston a lot of compliments. I did.
You should have more Boston guests on.
All right, if I get a Bruins guest,
you should
Jeff,
have Bruins.
I'll hope you reward it when we talk about other teams. Then
actually,
that's all you should be going for is Bruins guests. They're the only relevant team.
I'm actually if the Boston Bruins ever get eliminated, I actually have reached out to the McAvoy family, so we will get McAvoy on the show. I've known his family for a while, so we'll have him on if Boston ever gets eliminated in the playoffs this year. We will have McAvoy on the show. So.
They won't be. It's okay. It'll be a long time before you'd ever get that interview.
Well,
they're going to keep going and go. They're like the Energizer Bunny of the NHL playoffs.
Nevertheless, we'll get him on the show, and I'm trying to work on Adam Fox because I'm, Adam.
Another great stat: the Bruins have 4 guys in the top 10 in plus-minus rating, and actually have the top 3 in the league. 1, 2, and 3. Can you name them, Speedy, without looking it up?
Ooh, all right. So the top 3 in
Bergeron
plus-minus rating.
Nope.
All right. So I'll say.
Go try to name them in order too, because you'll never get it. That's what's fun about the whole thing.
All right. Here. All right. Lindholm, number 1. I'll go with.
He is not. He is number 2.
Oh, he's number 2. That's a shame. All right.
I think he's like a plus 46 or a plus 47 or something. It's somewhere in that area.
All right. I'll say Eric Halla.
Nope. Oh. And he plays for the Devils. Good
guess. Oh,
guess.
no, Eric Halla. Oh, my bad. Charlie Coyle. I always mix them up. Charlie Coyle.
You mix up Eric Halla with Charlie Coyle?
Because they were ex-Wild teammates. They're ex-Wild teammates. I mixed them up.
Nope.
Is it? It's not Coyle. Okay.
So who was it? Who is it?
You'll never get it. That's what's so great.
So give it to us.
Number 1 in the league, Grizzlick.
Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Number 2, Hampus Lindholm. Number 3, Brandon Carlo. And number 10, Charlie McAvoy. And McAvoy is only 10th because he's like a plus 37. And he's only that 10th because he missed the first 6 weeks of the season.
Well,
otherwise, you'd just be body bagging people.
That's
what it's about. The Bruins.
There it is.
But this is what I'm saying. The Bruins are having such an unbelievable season. You guys haven't even found these stats. You know why? Because we're worried about Alex Lafreniere or what the kid line is doing. We love the kid line.
First of all, I never said I love the kid line. It was a Ranger guy, and we're talking about the Rangers. That's.
Even when that guy's not here. By the way, that guy's very good.
He's
right?
very
He's
good. Yes.
awesome. Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah, he's
but
really
even when he's not there, it's not even about that. It's just about New York. You guys don't even give the credit to the guys that are leading the league. There's one line in hockey. All three guys on one line in hockey have over 100 points.
I said it. I said it. They have the number one line in hockey. What are you not listening?
Who does?
The Boston Bruins.
Well, again, they're not the ones with all three guys over 100 points.
I said that the Boston Bruins have the best line in hockey. As I've said.
Not by the numbers, which is how you
Doesn't
measure
matter.
things. There's one line in hockey. All three guys have over 100 points. All three of them.
Is it
That's
Edmonton?
insane.
Is it Edmonton?
It is Edmonton.
Yeah.
Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, and McDavid. All three of them over 100 points. You know why? Because they don't play in New York.
No, because they have the best player in the world. That's why.
In the second or third.
Hey, listen. You can say what you want, and look, I agree with you.
Don't say he's not the best player in the world.
No. I agree with you. But Leon Draisaitl is not
Fantastic.
Right, he's the second or third best
I've
player
always
in the
said that
world.
he was the second best player in the world. And the only reason why, dude, if you look at Edmonton right now, their goals against is horrible. And they still have 104 points because they have the best offensive players in the league. That's just the way it is. And they have a chance to win. And they'll have a chance to win this year. Not because of their goaltending, not because of their defense, because they have two awesome players. That's why. And they could take over
but
series.
Every night it's Islanders and Rangers. There's hockey outside of that state, you know.
Do you not understand? Are you not listening to us? We do talk about other teams. We're here in New York, but we talk about the Boston Bruins. We talk about the Devils. We talk about the Devils.
Barely.
Get out.
Oh, New York adjacent. Oh, way to go way outside.
They're not New York.
I know. It's only about 2.5 miles from New York to their shit stadium.
Well, you're right. It is a shit stadium.
Arena, stadium, whatever you want.
It is. It's not the nicest place.
Yeah, of course it's shit. All of New Jersey is shit.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
It's shit and shit adjacent.
Oh God, here it is. Well, you're going to be eating that after Aaron Rodgers goes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Hey, look, San Francisco's moving in. I might not have to.
No, that's
Did
not.
you hear that rumor?
Dude, that's
San
not.
Francisco's.
Yeah, Craig Carton. Craig Carton brought that rumor in. It's not true. Go look at that rumor.
They're going to
It's
trade a
bull.
bunch of compensation third round
It
picks.
is bull. And first of all, they don't.
Made it to the Pat McAfee show, and AJ Hawk, good friend of Aaron Rodgers, says it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Oh, of course he said that. Come on. It's all to stir up a conversation. That's not going to happen. I'm telling you.
They're in need.
They don't have the money. They don't have the money. They just paid Hargrave. No, really? They could free up what?
Yeah, they can restructure contracts and open.
Well, good luck.
Space.
Good luck trying to do that because they only have third-round draft picks this year, and they have a first-round draft pick.
No, they have 3 compensation third-round picks.
I'm talking about the year after.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
maybe Green Bay trades them to San Francisco out of spite to the Jets. Maybe
Green Bay is not trading. They're not trading out of the same conference. That's what I've heard. Green Bay will not trade him to an NFC team.
Jeff, here's the other thing, too. The Green Bay Packers front office has done everything they can to be petty to Aaron Rodgers. Do you think they want to trade him to the team that he's always wanted to play for?
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, it might send a message to the rest of the league. Give me what I want, or I'll ship him somewhere else.
Oh, well.
All right, have fun settling for a bunch of compensation picks.
Good.
I'm not going to. You can say what you want, but that's a strategy that has worked very successful.
Fine, and you know what?
Person that Errol hates.
And you know what the Jets will do? Because I would give up 2 first-round draft picks for him. They'll go after Lamar Jackson. It's not going to hurt me. It's not. So if they lose out on Aaron Rodgers,
and they go after, I
100%,
even.
100%.
I don't even think that's in the realm of possibility because I'm one of these people that believes that the NFL owners are colluding against Lamar Jackson.
I do believe that the only reason why the Jets have stepped away from their name being brought up because they were one of the lead 3 names to be brought up in the Lamar Jackson sweepstakes. I've heard that and also Matthew Stafford is a name that the Jets have brought up in conversation if they do not get Aaron Rodgers, but it's almost a clear fact that he's going to the Jets.
Look, I would tend to agree with you that the Jets are most likely 98% more than likely to get him. But hey, look, there's always a chance, right?
Yeah,
I mean, things don't seem to be going that well in these trade discussions.
No, because they want a first-round draft pick, and the Jets told them to go sit on it. Because here's the thing. You don't know if he's going to play 2 years. He says he will, but there's no guarantee. So the Jets want to guarantee if they're going to give him next year's first-round draft pick, if he decides to retire, they want a second-round compensated. They want a second-round pick compensated for it, and they won't give it to him. So then the Jets aren't giving up a first-round draft pick. That's pretty. The Jets are trying to be fair to themselves. They want to put themselves behind the 8 ball if Aaron Rodgers decides after the first year, no matter how well he plays, that he wants to retire. So that's why the Jets, and the trigger hasn't been pulled, because the Jets want something to kind of match out that trade.
Who's gonna blink first in this standoff, though, right? Because it's like
it will be Green Bay.
The draft is coming. The season will be approaching. I mean, are you sure?
100%. Because if Green Bay doesn't make this trade before the draft, what kind of weapons are they going to throw to going in? And they have to pay Aaron Rodgers in September $60 million. So you're going to pay a guy that doesn't want to play there. You don't want him there. $60 million to sit on a bench. That would be horrific.
Yeah, they got to pay him $60 million in September. But imagine if this keeps dragging out and you're the Jets and you. What they still only have Zach Wilson on the roster?
I believe what's going to happen.
Who else did they get for a backup? Who else is there?
They brought Tim Boyle in to be the backup quarterback. So, he's not starting, dude. He's not starting. Again, you're not listening. They brought him in to be the signal caller because he knows Nathaniel Hackett's signal caller.
Right. I totally understand what you're saying, but what you just said to me was,
I just told you what's going on. You did not listen to me. Matthew Stafford, Lamar Jackson.
The Jets can't afford to wait till September, so the Packers don't care about that money.
If I'm telling you right now, if Aaron Rodgers does not get traded before I believe before the trade, the draft, they're going to wait until the end of the draft, and the Jets have till July before OTAs open up. If they do not get Aaron Rodgers by OTAs, if Lamar Jackson's still sitting there, and if Matthew Stafford is still available, I guarantee you they'll swoop right in and get one of those guys. And the Jets will be willing to give up 2 first-round draft picks for Lamar Jackson. I believe that because he's 26 years old, and you can sign him for a long-term deal, and he will be your quarterback for the next 7 to 8 years. So the Jets would be willing to do this.
Right, but that was my argument the whole time, like that I had said, why not just go after Lamar, pay the draft picks, get your quarterback for the next 10 years rather than 2? And so why wouldn't they have just done that as their first option?
Because Aaron Rodgers fits what they're trying to do with Nathaniel Hackett's offense. If they bring in Lamar Jackson, they got to change the offense around. That's the reason why. They want to run the structure offense, the West Coast offense that they like to run. If they go with Lamar, they're going to have to change the structure of it. So, and then there's Matthew Stafford, who I think would fit like a glove too in that offense.
Week, and then they wouldn't have a quarterback again.
You might be right. You might be right, but hey, you know what? He's better than anybody on that bench. So Matthew Stafford as your starting quarterback is better than
Matthew Stafford is better with a broken back than anyone on the Jets bench.
Jeff.
It's true. Tim Boyle, you literally just signed a guy that's your professional sign language guy.
He's your signal call, yeah.
Right, professional sign language, right? And then you got Zach Wilson. So, yeah, broken back Matt Stafford. And by the way, Zach Wilson, I cannot believe how the most talented guy in that draft class is this big of a failure.
Here he goes.
What?
Stuck says Matt Stafford is broken.
I saw what he said.
The year of the FUD. # the bait of Bay Shore.
Why is he broken? Because he wasn't healthy last year? And they're saying that he's healthy. He had his surgery this offseason. And they say
let's face it, though, he hasn't been healthy for a long time.
No.
He's been playing hurt for a long time.
And I think he's going to be healthy this year. I do. So, and he says he's coming back and he's healthy. So I'm not going to fight with him saying that he can't. He's a talented.
Who isn't going to say that though? How many times did you hear Sam Bradford go, "Oh, he'll good this year"?
You know what I think is going to be a nice pickup is San Francisco bringing in Sam Darnold, because I think Sam Darnold's going to win that job. I do. I think Sam Darnold fits like a glove in that offense. So everybody keeps talking about Trey Lance and Purdy. How much you want to bet that
Purdy's
Sam Darnold,
not going to be ready for the beginning of the season.
I don't think
he's not going to be ready until November.
I don't think he'll be ready. Period. This year, I don't think he's going to be 100% healthy. That's a UCL tear. Tommy John surgery. He's not. It's going to take him a while to throw the ball. So I think Sam Darnold could absolutely win the job from Trey Lance. And Sam Darnold's still fairly young. He's 25, 26 years old. He could honestly win that job over both those quarterbacks. I believe it. And with that team and that talent, I think it's perfect. He's from that area. He's from the California area. I think it's a good fit for him. I think it's a good move.
Think about how funny this is about Trey Lance, though, that he didn't even play his rookie year, played one game in his second year, and completely shattered his leg in every spot. And people still think he has more of a future than Zach Wilson.
Oh, God. Here we go with this Zach Wilson thing.
Is that not true? Like, I mean, think about how crazy that is.
Because a lot of people think that Zach Wilson needed to sit the bench and learn the offense. And now if whoever comes in, that's what's going to happen. So
that's what he should have done. That's what I said he should have done. But that ship is now sailed.
I don't think so.
He's now broken. He's the broken toy.
Broken toy. Okay. Right.
That's what it is. You got this child a toy. It was brand new. You beat the shit out of it and it broke. And now all of a sudden you're going to put it away now in the closet. And what do you think? You're going to take it out of the closet? It's not going to be broken anymore?
I think that if he sits behind a guy like Aaron Rodgers that he respects for 2 years and he learns the offense, first of all, Mike LaFleur is a horrible offensive coordinator. Horrible. A guy that trained a young quarterback how to throw the ball and how to run an offense in the game and the speed of the game. He was the worst guy to bring in, a rookie coach. Now you're bringing in Nathaniel Hackett, who's a very good offensive coordinator, understands the X's and the O's, and every single player that's come from that offense, especially the Green Bay Packers, and I've worked with him, says he's a great player-to-player coach. I think he's going to be great.
Zach Wilson's never going to learn a thing. I learned everything I needed to know about Zach Wilson. Christmas was it for me with Zach Wilson. Done with him. Did you see the gift he got his offensive lineman?
What?
Imagine getting 10 400-pounders scooters as a Christmas gift.
They're electric scooters. They're great.
Are you kidding me? Scooters for a 400-pounder.
Dude, those scooters go 50, 60 miles per hour. Shut up, Jeff. You are such a pain in the ass.
Imagine a 400-pounder just scooting around on that thing. It's going to look like a joke.
Have you ever been? How much do you weigh, Jeff? 230, 240?
No. I'm 260.
All right, you're 260. You don't think you could use a scooter, an electric scooter?
I take them all the time. I use spin and line.
Those things
and bird.
Dude, some of those go 50 miles per hour. Those things are fast.
Not the ones you can rent. The ones you can rent only do like 11 or 12.
I've seen some of them on Amazon that they go up to 50 miles per hour. It's crazy. I want to get one. I think those things will be fun. I don't know if you need a license for it.
I doubt it.
Those things are fast.
No, you don't, but you can get a DUI on it.
Really?
Oh, really?
100% you can. It's got wheels. You can get a DUI on rollerblades. You can get a DUI on a bicycle. You can get a DUI on anything. The DUI on the scooter thing was new to me.
That's crazy. I would have never thought that.
100%. It's got wheels. You're on pavement. You use the same space that cars use. You're in like a bike lane, right? You're in the road. You can't be doing that drunk.
I just wouldn't have thought it because it doesn't have an engine. That's interesting. It's just your own body control on rollerblades.
Dude, Bill Murray got a DUI in a golf cart.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Right. So it's like like if you're in the road using something, you can get a DUI. And I only knew about that because, down here in Tampa, weather's nice all year round. We did a little bit of scooter gang. My homeboy got a DUI on it. It was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I definitely want to get a scooter. Those things are fun, man. They look really, really fun. And when you go to a place, you go to a city.
Yeah, but you're also not 400 pounds. Imagine putting a 400-pound lineman on.
I'm not
terrible gift.
I'm not 400 pounds,
terrible gift giver, and he's completely thoughtless. And that's the same brain he's trying to squeeze football plays into, and it's just not working.
You're an idiot. I'm actually 232, so I'm not 400, but I'm a pretty big guy, So
right. So two of you.
Yeah.
Half of a beef.
Half of a beef. Actually, the beef claims he's 195 pounds. I don't know, but he says he is.
Just pelican neck.
Stop.
Just that pouch he's got.
He says he's 195 pounds. So I don't know.
That's something I'm willing to wager on.
Really?
100%. I got $1,000 coming into my Venmo. I will use that $1,000 and BP.
Really? Where are you getting that $1,000 from the Venmo? Who's sending that to you?
from you for
I've
slandering Jalen
never
Carter.
made a bet with you. You keep saying I owe you $1,000. You're a piece of work, man. You really are. You're such a piece.
You claimed you never said something. You clearly said it, and I was like,
I
$8,000.
definitely never said that, Jeff. I never said anything about $1,000. That I do know. I never said I'm going to bet you $1,000.
I put it out there. I put that bet
and
out.
I said no. I'm not betting you $1,000.
Well, you were so adamant, screaming at me that you claimed that you never said Jalen Carter got several DUIs.
Oh God,
was that true?
First of all,
fake news.
All right, I'm not getting into this right now. I'm not. I'm tired. I don't need this. I do not need this from you, Jeff. I do not.
Because I went back to 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 40 seconds of
Good
your last
for
show,
you,
and
Jeff.
clearly said that.
Good. Why don't you get your thumb out of your ass, okay? What the hell is wrong with you?
What does that have anything to do with you being fake news and claiming things about Jalen Carter?
Fake news. I said he's been. Yes, I said that he was in trouble by drinking and driving. But I what I meant is he's been
multiple
in trouble
times. Just to get it right, you said.
I said
multiple times.
What I meant was he's been in trouble driving and speeding on the road multiple times. That's what I meant.
Well, what you meant and what you said are two different things.
All right, Jeff. Thank you for calling. You're so wonderful.
Do we need a decoder ring for the things that you say to try to figure out what you actually meant?
Do we need a decoder ring for you and everything that you say?
No, because I'm actually correct about the things.
Goodbye, Jeff.
I've never claimed.
Thank you, Jeff.
70 miles an hour.
Thank you, Jeff. Good night. How wonderful that guy is.
Who knew you get a DUI on rollerblades? Fun facts here on the Sports Lounge.
I do love the guy. I just think he's out of his damn mind. And whenever he makes a mistake or he says something, nobody can say anything. Nobody attacks him. When I say something, because I'm speaking out loud of whatever I'm saying, he'll try to nitpick anything I say. Even if it's the slightest thing wrong, he'll attack it. But that's Jeff. I can't hate on somebody that's just out of his damn mind. But anyways, thank you, Jeff, for just brightening up my day. Thank you to Kyle Hall. He was fantastic. Jeff is right. He is a fantastic, broadcaster / writer. He is fantastic. Thank you to him for being on a third time. I keep forgetting that he's been on the show.
The last time he was on, it was when Mikey C was here, too.
All right. That's a while ago.
Yeah, it was November last year.
That was a while ago. Thank you to John. I know John has been working, and he was doing, what was he doing? A speech
He was doing a speech at Wrigleyville, so I guess that's somewhere near Wrigley Field.
All right. Well, congratulations to him. We'll get him on. John, we love you. This would have been the 5th or 6th time you've been on the show.
This is number 5, so he'll join Matt Musico in the company of guests we've had on 5 times.
Awesome. But thank you to John. I know you're busy, but the fact that you even give us the time of the day, we really appreciate you. We'll get you on in the next week or two. Thank you to all the fans. Thank you. Thank you to the crazy people out there that want to continue sending me crazy emails. And by the way, my Twitter feed is open, and I do read my Twitter feed. For all those people out there that think that I don't read the messages you send me on Twitter, I do. I think some of you so funny, but nevertheless, I really appreciate you, and keep writing. And thank you to all the fans that love me and give me nothing but compliments and really make me feel good about why I do this and why I entertain you guys. But thank you to all the fans. I really do appreciate it. I'm sure Speedy too. There's a lot of people that love you too, Speedy, that speak very highly of you and the work that you put into. And we just appreciate everybody that tunes into us and gives us the love. So thank you to all the fans. Go check out 103.9 FM. What time is our show on
Hour after the Islander game.
So see, now you got it right. So at 10:30 on Saturday night on 103.9 FM, if you live here on Long Island, or iHeartRadio, check out LI News Radio, and you can check it out, pop us on, and we will be on live after the New York Islander game, a big Islander game against Philadelphia. Yeah. So, and the Islanders are still on the move for the playoffs. So if they can win at least 2 out of the next 3 games, I think they're in. I don't see Pittsburgh winning 3 games in a row. I don't see Florida winning 3 games in a row. And
Florida's got the toughest one. They've got 2 hard teams.
I don't think any of those 2 teams are going to win 3 in a row. So Islanders just need to pull out 2 more wins, and I think they're in. So, but we'll know by the end of the season, which will be on Tuesday or Wednesday. So,
I think the end of the regular season's on Thursday. So, because I think the Panthers
is it the Thursday? When's the Islanders' last game? I think
the Islanders' last game is Wednesday, but the Panthers and Hurricanes play Thursday. So, I guess we'll see maybe potentially the fate at that point of the Islanders' season. Maybe they were clinched by then. Maybe they knock out Carolina in that game, or Florida in that game is meaningless. We'll see.
We'll see. But thank you to the fans. We will be back next week. By the way, our shows will be Tuesday and Wednesday next week because I'm going away for a couple of days at the end of the week. So on Tuesday, our show will be at 9 o'clock. So it'll be a little flipperoo. So 9 o'clock on Tuesday and on Wednesday at 7 o'clock, 7 to 10. So stay tuned. More bracket wars. We have a new segment called Let's Parlay. So we'll have a betting, by the way, thank you to Jeff for giving us the idea for getting a betting part of the show, betting segment on the show. We've been doing that on our 103-point show, The Weekend Crunch, called Moneyline Mania. And now I created a new segment called Let's Parlay. It's really, really cool. So we'll have a couple of guys on the show and they'll put their best parlay together for you to bet, and we'll keep tabs on it. At the end of the month, I will give out a gift certificate, whoever has the best record. So it's either a $25, $30 gift certificate. I'll pay for you and your girl to get, Wendy's or something. I don't know.
By the way, speaking of Tuesday, our guest at 9:15 we'll have Mike Adams, ex MLB relief pitcher, and now the founder of Baseball Performance Center. He'll be on at 9:15, and at 9:45 we will have the Iona head basketball coach and the coach of Fairleigh Dickinson when they won against Purdue this year. Tobin Anderson will be joining us at 9:45, and then on Wednesday we're gonna have 2 of their players from Fairleigh Dickinson, Sean Moore and Braden Reynolds, will be joining us at 7:30.
There you go, guys. If you like March Madness and you like college basketball, so it's must see and must listen to on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. So thank you. And then the week after we have Kurt Warner's son coming on the
Cade
show.
Warner.
Cade Warner will be coming on the show
on April 19th.
There you go. So that's just we'll have more guests obviously that week, but we'll work. Speedy's working hard. And thank you to all the fans that listen to us. Like I said, we'll be back next week. Good night.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Of course my kid's in the right car seat. Well, I think he is.
Yeah, my kid's in a booster seat. He was